Hey, what up, Seekers? I think we're live. So, for all of those that are here, ready? We will tell you what we're doing. We are reading The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. I probably mispronounced his name. It is a very sweet story, which I read as a kid, and it is a children's book for adults. And to make sure that we mix up the childishness and the adultishness, we're gonna have some whiskey here, and we're gonna have a shot at l'chaim for all the new subscribers that join us. We'll try to one shot for every subscriber, and someone here will have to tell me when we have a new subscriber. We might have to slow down. We have to change the rate up if there are too many people joining, because we want to make it to the end of the book. Unlike last time where we hardly made it through. Well, we almost didn't make it through. And maybe I will have a little drink with myself until someone says that they can hear me. Nice. Okay, so here is the first l'chaim. And let's say hi to everyone that has joined us. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol. That is delicious. Oh, there it is. There it is. Okay, great. Hey, Seneca. Thank you all for joining us. And yes, we're going to have some fun tonight. We are doing this to celebrate having reached 10,000 subscribers, which is a crazy milestone. And without too much further ado, let us read The Little Prince. And we will try and be interactive. If you have a book to read alongside with us, that's going to be really fun. And you can do that, and you can ask questions, and we'll try to stay engaged with the audience here, like a good book reader should. And whose job is it to tell me when we need to take another shot for some more subscribers that join? We're gonna nominate Alyssa to do that. Alyssa, will you tell us? Okay. Let us begin then. We're gonna begin on. Have a look at these beautiful illustrations. These illustrations were done by the author themselves, and I will show you the illustrations when we get to them. Once, when I was 6 years old, I saw a magnificent picture in a book called True Stories of the Virgin Forest. It showed a boa constrictor swallowing a wild beast. Here is a copy of the drawing. And Ali says that the volume is very good. Thank you, Ali. In the book it said, boa constrictor swallows their prey whole without chewing. Afterwards, they are unable to move, and they digest by going to sleep for 6 months. Wow. So Ali asked what we're drinking. We are drinking this is a bit of unsponsored product placement, Glenmorangie whiskey, Scotch whiskey. Is it a Jewish custom to drink? There definitely is some Jewish customs around drinking. In the Hasidic community, which is the one particular sect of Judaism which I belong to, there is a lot of custom around drinking. So the answer is yes. We are doing this as part of a traditional, religious, ritualistic tradition. This is not just frivolous drinking. This, by the way, is a children's book, but as you may know, children's books often hold the most wisdom and the deepest secrets. So if anyone thinks that they're too grown up for a children's book, think twice and see what this book has in store for us. So the boa constrictors, they swallow their prey whole, and they digest it by sleeping for 6 months, half a year. This made me think a lot about the adventures of the jungle, and eventually I succeeded with a colored pencil in making my first drawing. My drawing number 1, it looked like this. I showed my masterpiece to the grown-ups and asked if my drawing frightened them. Why would a hat frighten anyone, they asked. My drawing was not of a hat. So then I drew the inside of the boa constrictor for the benefit of the grown-ups. Grown-ups always need explanations. my drawing number 2 looked like this. So that was number 1, and this is number 2. You can see the elephant inside the boa constrictor. The grown-ups advised me. The grown-ups now advise me to give up drawing boa constrictors altogether from the inside or the outside, and devote myself instead to geography, history, arithmetic, and grammar. So it was that, at the age of 6, I gave up my wonderful career as a painter. I had been discouraged by the failure of drawing number 1 and my drawing number 2. Grown-ups never understand anything by themselves, and it is exhausting for children always and forever to be giving explanations. So Sue says that they didn't know that it was a book, that it was only a cartoon. Yeah, it's a book which they've made cartoons and movies and theaters and all kinds of stuff they've made. But originally, it's a book with little water paint drawings by the author. I had to choose a different career, and then so I learned how to fly airplanes. I had flown all over the world, and geography, I will admit, has served me very well. At a glance, I can distinguish China from Arizona, which is very useful if you get lost in the night. In the course of my life, I have therefore had many dealings with many important people. I have lived a great deal among grown-ups. I have observed them from close up. This has not greatly improved my opinion of them. Shade. Whenever I came across one who seemed to me at all clear-headed, I would try showing my drawing number 1, which I always kept with me. Remember, that's drawing number 1. I wanted to find out if this was someone with a real understanding, but the answer would always be, that is a hat. In which case, I would not talk to that person about boa constrictors, or virgin forests, or stars. I would place myself on their level. I would talk about bridge and golf, about politics and neckties. And the grown-up would be very pleased to have made the acquaintance of such a sensible fellow. Ali says that he's glad that we're being slowed down by the book and by the alcohol, because it's usually hard to keep up. I appreciate that you appreciate the pace. For everyone's knowledge, you can always slow down YouTube by changing the playback speed. If I'm ever going too fast in my videos, you can bring it back down to 0.75 or something like that. Okay, chapter 2. So I kept my own company without anyone whom I could really talk to until 6 years ago, when I made a forced landing in the Sahara Desert. Something had broken in my engine, and as I had neither mechanic nor passengers with me, I braced myself to attempt a difficult repair job all alone. It was a matter of life and death. I had barely enough water to last a week. This, by the way, part of the novel is actually based on a true life event that happened in the life of Saint-Exupéry, who was partaking of a race from like France to Morocco, and he crashed in the Sahara. And him and a co-pilot or passenger, they went for like 3 days without any water, and they were like dehydrating, but then they were resuscitated by like a Bedouin that found them in the desert and saved their lives. So this part of the story is actually true. Nice. Ali, you're about to learn a whole lot more from The Little Prince. Trust. And Mediocrity says 0.75 is the right speed. That's right. Are you saying shot because we have new subscribers? Is that no? Okay. You should do a shot. Why? Wait. We have rules here. Okay. So yeah, if anyone is subscribing, we're gonna welcome them with a shot. So remember, bring your friends, bring your family. On the first night, then I went to sleep on the sand after he's been desert wrecked with his plane. I went to sleep in the sand 1,000 miles from any human habitation. I was more isolated than a shipwrecked man on a raft in mid-ocean. So imagine my surprise to be woken at daybreak by a funny little voice saying, "If you please, draw me a sheep." What? Draw me a sheep? I leapt to my feet, completely thunderstruck. I rubbed my eyes slowly. I looked around slowly, and then I saw a most extraordinary little fellow who stood there solemnly watching me. Here is the best likeness that later on I was able to make of him. Let me show you the picture. This is the drawing. The best likeliness of the little prince. I just want to say, by the way, that I borrowed this book from a good friend of mine, Tzvi Cantor, and Tzvi lent me this book on condition that I thank him every single chapter. And we'll at least do it once now, and we'll see about later on. But thank you, Tzvi. I very much appreciate you lending us this very precious book of yours. Tzvi is a wonderful father to two beautiful little boys, and I think he's read this book to them. And I thank you, Tzvi, for allowing me to continue reading this, to carry on the Little Prince. So here's the best likeliness that we can draw of the Little Prince. The drawing is certainly far less delightful than the original. Oh, that's nice. But that is not my fault. I'd been discouraged by the grown-ups in my career as a painter when I was 6 years old, and had never learned to draw anything except the inside the boas and outside the boas. Now, I don't know what QBL stands for. What does QBL stand for? So, sir, you're going to have to help us out with your acronyms. Now, I was staring at this apparition before me, my eyes popping out of my head. Oh, Kabbalah. How is this going to help you with learning of Kabbalah? That is a great question. I think you're going to have to just find out. Not always are the paths towards the mysteries clear and simple. Sometimes they take the form of children's books. If you have the patience and you stick around with me and you're still not sure in like an hour from now, ask me again and I'll tell you. Now I was staring at this apparition before me, my eyes popping out of my head. Remember, I was 1,000 miles from any human habitation, yet this little fellow seemed neither to have lost his way, nor to be dying of exhaustion or hunger or thirst or fright. Nothing about him suggested a child astray in the middle of the desert, 1,000 miles from all human habitation. When I finally found my voice, I said, "But what are you doing here?" To which he merely repeated very slowly, as though it was a matter of great consequence, "If you please, draw me a sheep." When a mystery is too overwhelming, you do not dare to question it. When a mystery is too overwhelming, you do not dare to question it. Absurd as it might seem to me, 1,000 miles from any inhabited place, and in danger of death, I took out a sheet of paper and a fountain pen out of my pocket. Then I remembered at school I had only properly studied geography, history, arithmetic, and grammar. So I told the little fellow, with a touch of irritation, that I don't know how to draw. He replied, "That doesn't matter. Draw me a sheep." As I had never drawn a sheep before, I copied out for him one of the two pictures that I did know how to draw, the boa constrictor, seen from the outside, and was astonished to hear little fellow say, "No, no, no. I don't want an elephant inside a boa constrictor. Boas are very dangerous, and elephants are very cumbersome. Where I come from, everything is tidy. What I need is a sheep. Draw me a sheep." So I drew him one. He studied it carefully. Then he said, "No, that one is already very sickly. Do me another." So I drew another. My friend smiled gently, ever indulgently. "Surely you can see for yourself that is not a sheep, it's a ram. Look at his horns." So I did my drawing once more, but it too was rejected like the others. Let me show you the 3 sheeps that he drew. That's number 1, which is sickly. That's number 2, which looks like a ram, and that's the third one, which it looks like it has a third eye there. Okay. Yeah, the book was banned. Oh, mysterious. This one is too old. I want a sheep who will live a long time. My patience was by now exhausted, for I was in a hurry to start dismantling my engine, so I quickly scribbled the drawing you see below. This is the drawing. Then I added by way of explanation, "That is his box. The sheep you want is inside." And, much to my surprise, I saw the face of my young judge light up. That's exactly how I want him. Do you think the sheep will need a lot of grass? Why? Because where I come from, everything is tiny. Oh, there's bound to be enough. I've given you a tiny sheep. He bent over the drawing. He's not as small as that. Look, he's gone to sleep. And so it was that I made the acquaintance of the Little Prince. Ba-da-da-da. We're up to chapter 3. Thank you for lending us this book. I just want to say that for anyone who's here and is burning with questions about mysticism and serious adult things, or what they think is serious adult things, we're doing a Q&A probably next week. And please hold on to your questions for that Q&A. We're going to be answering all the serious questions. But for now, we're going to be spending some time with the Little Prince. And trust me, there's something to learn from this Little Prince. Bengalis are intelligent says, please tell us something about Sefer Bahir. That, my friend, we'll wait for next week. We're going to do a Q&A. Now, back to the Little Prince. It took me a long time to discover where he came from. The Little Prince, who asked me so many questions, seemed never to hear the ones I asked him. It was from chance words dropping here and there that all was revealed to me. For instance, when he noticed my airplane for the first time, I'm not going to draw my airplane, it would be far too complicated for me, he said, "What is that thing over there?" And I was proud to have him know that I could fly. At which he cried out, "What? You fell from the sky?" "Yes," I answered demurely. "Well, how very funny." And the Little Prince broke into a charming peal of laughter. Ha 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 ha. Which I found greatly irritating, for I like my misfortunes to be taken seriously. Then he added, "You two, then, come from the sky. Which planet are you from?" Suddenly, I had a glimmer of understanding into the mystery of his presence here, and I quizzed him sharply. "So, you come from another planet?" But he made no reply. He merely shook his head gently, looking all the while at my airplane. "No, you can't have come from very far in that thing." And he fell into a long reverie. Then, taking my drawings out of his pocket, he became absorbed in the contemplation of his treasure. Yes, Timon, we agree with you. There are simple stories hold great lessons, and we're going to explore them together. And we're going to read it, hopefully, from beginning to end. That's the plan. All the while drinking for all new subscribers that join us. We lost one. I have to undrink a shot. You can imagine how intrigued I was by this half confidence about other planets. I did my utmost, therefore, to find out more. "Where are you from, then, little fellow? Where is this where I live that you mention? Where do you want to take my sheep?" After a reflective silence, he answered, "The best thing about the box you've given me is that at night it can be used as his house. Of course, if you are good, I will give you a rope to tether him during the day and a post to tether him to." This proposal seemed to shock the Little Prince. Tether him? What an odd idea. But if you don't tether him, he may go anywhere and end up lost. And my friend burst out laughing once more. "Ha ha ha ha. And where do you imagine he would go?" "Anywhere. Straight ahead of him." At which the prince remarked solemnly, "That won't matter. Where I come from, it's so very small." Then, with perhaps a hint of sadness, he added, "Straight ahead does not take anyone very far." Chapter 4. From this I learnt a second fact of great importance. The planet that he came from was scarcely bigger than a house. This was no great surprise to me. I knew very well that besides the important planets Earth, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, and so, to which names have been given, there were also hundreds of others, some so small that one has trouble finding them even through the telescope. Here is a telescope. When an astronomer discovers one of these, he gives it a number instead of a name. For example, he might call it Asteroid 3251. I have good reason to believe that the planet from which this little prince came is asteroid known as B-612. This asteroid has only been once seen through the telescope by a Turkish astronomer in 1909. At the time, this astronomer made a great presentation of his discovery before an international congress of astronomy, but since he was wearing Turkish national costume, nobody would believe him. Grown-ups are like that. You see, he's wearing a Turkish hat and Turkish garb. He was not taken seriously. Fortunately, and we have a picture of the asteroid upon which the little prince lives. If you think it looks similar, it is the same picture from the front. Fortunately for the reputation of asteroid B-612, a Turkish dictator ordered his subjects on pain of death to convert to European dress. In 1920, our astronomer repeated his demonstration, wearing elegant evening dress. This time, everyone accepted his proofs. And here we see him once in his traditional Turkish dress, and then once in his elegant Western evening dress. Hi, Yawings. Thanks for joining us. The reason I have told you so much about asteroid B-612 and let you know its numbers is because of grown-ups. Grown-ups love figures. When you describe a new friend to them, they never ask you about the important things. They never say, what is his voice like? What are his favorite games? Does he collect butterflies? Instead, they demand, how old is he? How many brothers has he? How much does he weigh? How much does his father earn? Only then do they feel they know him. If you say to the grown-ups, I've seen a lovely house made of pink brick with geraniums in the windows and doves on the roof, they are unable to picture such a house. You must say, I saw a house that costs 100,000 francs. Then they cry out, oh, how pretty. True story. Let's get comfy. Again, you might say to them, the proof that the little prince existed is that he was enchanting, that he laughed, and that he was looking for sheep. When someone wants a sheep, it is proof that they exist. The grown-ups will merely shrug their shoulders and treat you like a child. But if you tell them the planet he came from is an asteroid B-612, then they will be convinced and will spare you with all their questions. This is how they are. You must not hold it against them. Children have to be very indulgent towards grown-ups. Yeah, Garrett, that's an expensive house, and it has geraniums in the window and doves on the roof. Thank you, Garrett. Of course, for we who understand life, figures are quite unimportant. I would have liked to begin this story in the matter of a fairy tale. I would have liked to write, once upon a time there was a little prince who lived on a planet scarcely bigger than himself, and who was in need of a friend. To those who understand life, that would have a much greater air of truth. I want to tell you that I read the introduction to this book today before reading the book for you guys. And the introduction is written by a grown-up for grown-ups. And he writes about how the author, Saint-Exupéry, really spent a lot of time choosing the exact words and going through many drafts and many redactions until he came to these exact formulations. In the French, obviously, this is translated. And there's a lot of very small, beautiful gems that are honed and crafted and hidden along the way. And we're starting to see some of those emerge. The greater air of truth than figures and numbers is the story about a person, where they are, what they're looking for in their lives. You see, I do not want my story to be taken lightly. I have given so much grief setting down these memories. Already 6 years have passed since my friend went away along with his sheep. If I tried to describe him here, it is so as not to forget him. To forget a friend is sad. I might become like those grown-ups who no longer care for anything except figures. It is for this reason, too, that I've bought a paint box and some pencils. It is hard to take up drawing again at my age, when the only attempts you have ever made were of the boa constrictor from the inside and the boa constrictor from the outside, when you were 6 years old. Of course, I shall try to make my portraits as true to life as I can, but I am not at all sure of succeeding. Some drawings work, others do not. Sometimes my proportions are wrong. Here the little prince is too big, and here he is too small. Other times I waver over the colors of his clothing, and so I fumble along, trying this and that as best I can. I may even make mistakes as to more important details. But there you must forgive me. You see, my friend never gave me explanations. Perhaps he thought I was like him. But I, unfortunately, am not able to see sheep through the walls of boxes. Perhaps I am a bit of a grown-up after all. I must be getting old. Yeah? Why? No. Talon McKenwatts says, shout out to the owner of the book. The owner, shout out, because we're at chapter 5. Tvi Cantor, thanks for lending us your book. Tvi's a DJ. If anyone knows Tvi's DJ handle on Instagram, tell me so we can give a proper shout out so people can follow him on Instagram. Do you want to see? Yeah. Okay, so here we have the author telling us about his painting, how he doesn't feel like he can live up to the paintings that he would like to make. Oh, that was fast. Yeah, so Tvi Cantor is underscore Lostwave at Instagram. He's DJ who gave us this book. And Tvi is very much a child like me and like the Little Prince. Talon, is that Tvi secretly? Because that was pretty quick for you to figure out who what the Instagram handle was. Okay, so here we have the adult beginning to forget his childishness. He can't see through the box to use his imagination to see the sheep. But let's see. Every day I learned something about the Little Prince's planet, his departure from it, his journey. The details came very slowly in the course of conversation. And so it was on the third day that I learnt about the terrible baobabs. Uh-oh. The terrible baobabs. This time, once again, I had the sheep to think, for abruptly, as if seized by grave doubts, the Little Prince demanded, "It isn't true, isn't it, that sheep eat small bushes?" "Yes, it is true." "Good, I'm glad." I could not see why it was so important that a sheep should eat small bushes, but the Little Prince added, "Then it follows that they should also eat baobabs." I reminded the Little Prince that baobabs are not small bushes, but trees the size of churches, and that even if he took a whole herd of elephants home with him, they would not succeed in dispatching a single baobab. The idea of the herd of elephants made the Little Prince laugh. They would have to be stacked on top of each other. Then, he observed wisely enough, baobabs, before they grow big, start off small. Here is a picture of the elephants stacked on top of each other. And this is the Little Prince trying to do some gardening, looks like. So they do. But why do you want your sheep to eat up the baby baobabs? He merely replied, "Oh, come," as if it went without saying, and I had to make a great mental effort to work out the problem on my own. In effect, there were on the Little Prince's planet, as on every planet, good plants and bad plants. And consequently, there were good seeds from good plants and bad seeds from bad plants. But seeds, as everyone knows, are invisible. They sleep in the secrecy of the earth until one of them suddenly decides to wake up. So it stretches itself and timidly at first extends towards the sun, a ravishing, innocent little shoot. If this happens to be a sprig of radish or the beginnings of a rose bush, you can leave it grow wherever it wishes. But if it turns out to be a bad plant, you must root it up at once, the very instant you recognize it. Now, so that's what we see here. He's rooting out the bad plants the second that he recognizes it. Now, there were some terrible seeds on the little prince's planet, namely those of the baobab tree. The soil of the planet was infested with them, and a baobab, if you tackle it too late, can never be gotten rid of afterwards. It clutters everything. It will bore right through a planet with its roots, and if the planet is too small, and if the baobabs are too numerous, it will finally make the planet explode. Here is a picture of the baobabs destroying the planet. Someone is writing on my behalf here. Yeah. Garrett says this book is clicking for him all the more after hearing John Vervaeke, who we've been in dialogue with. Bengalis says, I like your YouTube channel because from this YouTube channel I can learn many new things. Thousands of things from you. Thank you. Thousands of you're welcome from us. I'm so glad you're liking it and learning new things. And we have to welcome a new subscriber to the channel. And we're going to do that by saying L'chaim. Cheers. Sure, you're welcome to do whatever you want. L'chaim. I was doing a bit of... Hey, Shannon. I was doing a bit of reading before I read this book. There's like lots of interpretations of what the book means and what the images are and what the references are to. The baobabs, according to one interpretation, is based on the time when this book was written, is referring to the Nazis, the way that they were taking over planet Earth, like these baobabs that were taking over the little planet and destroying everything in their conquest. But that's just an interpretation. It is a question of discipline, the little prince informed me later on. When you finish washing and dressing each morning, you must carefully wash and dress your planet. You must force yourself to pull up the baobabs regularly, as soon as they can be distinguished from the rose trees, which they resemble so closely in early youth. It's very tedious work, but it's very easy. Yawings teaches art and always draws the sheep and anaconda head on the board on the very first day. Nice. Very cool. The one day he suggested that I set about making a beautiful drawing so as to give children on my planet a clear idea of this. Then, if one day they travel, he said, they will come to use it. Sometimes one can safely put off doing what needs doing till later, but in the case of the baobabs, it always ends in disaster. I knew a planet that was inhabited by a lazy fellow. He neglected 3 little bushes, and guess what happened? This is what happened. 3 little bushes. This is a great little wisdom here, that some things in life... Here? Sure. Some things in life are... I forget. Some things in life are things that we want and they're good, and some things that aren't good. And we have to be vigilant to watch those things that aren't good and to be capable of rooting them out. Things that lead to hatred, self-hatred, hatred of others, things that lead to separation, things that lead to anxiety. And I like this idea of being alert. And sometimes they look very similar to the roses, which we do want in our lives, and being vigilant and being observant for those things. Because if you uproot them early on, then it's good. But if you let them fester and grow, they can destroy a planet. They can destroy a person and a soul. It's a nice little lesson. Let me know, by the way, do you want me to try and share my own interpretations of these lessons, or should we just read and let everyone interpret themselves? Let's see what the audience thinks. Okay. So, following the prince's little directions, I've made a drawing of that planet. I don't much like adopting the tone of a moralist, but the perils of Boboas is so little understood, and the risk run by anyone who strays onto an asteroid are so considerable that for once I will break my usual reserve and say categorically, children, beware of baobabs. Blah blah says, and share your interpretations. Jorge asked for it too. Yeah, so if the interpretation which I read this morning, that the baobabs represent Nazism or fascism or hatred basically in general, thank you, Garrett, then we have to be aware of these things. And even when we're trying to be childlike, everyone here wants interpretations. Thank you. Perennial Force. I don't think I've seen you around at the channel. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Shannon. Sometimes we want to be, there's also a tendency amongst the mystics, right? The mystics have this childlike sense to them. The mystic sometimes who feels that they're beyond good and evil, wants to let all things grow and all things flourish. But some things, we can see them as being bad, and that's okay to call them bad. And it's okay as well to uproot those things and to be assiduous about that. I think that's important. Mediocrity says it's hard to know exactly what kind of plant. Yeah, it's hard sometimes to tell the difference between a baobab and a rose. And a rose is a very strong theme, which we're going to see later in this book. We're going to see themes of uniqueness, of collectivity, of preciousness, of individuality. Lots of really, really great themes. Yeah, someone's read this book before, the Rose and the Fox. We're gonna get to that. I have a good friend. He's been on the channel before. I did a conversation with him with Yehuda Katz, and he has a study session where he learns this book together with his grandma over the phone, and he has a lot of insight into this book. I could have invited him for the reading. Yeah, you want to send him a message? It is to warn friends. I'm gonna text my friend to come and join us for this reading. Where is he? Yeah. Here. You want to check in the message? Thank you. Okay. It is to warn friends of a danger they have skirted. Okay, so he says, children beware of baobabs. It is to warn friends of a danger they have skirted unknowingly for too long. As I myself have done, that I worked so hard at this drawing. The lesson I had to pass on was worth the trouble it has cost me. Perhaps you're asking yourself, why are there no other drawings in this book as magnificent as the baobab drawing? Let's check out this drawing one more time just to see how magnificent it truly is. Thanks. And this is from a man who says he's not a very good drawer. Mm-hmm. Where were we? Oh, we're on the next page. The answer is quite simple. I tried with the rest, but did not succeed. When I drew the baobabs, I was driven on by a sense of urgency. There's a sense of urgency in confronting those things in our lives, which you don't want to grow free and fester and take rain and suck up the nutrients in the soil that we have for other things in our lives to grow. And when there's an urgency behind something, we put in our best effort to draw the best representation of the baobabs. Remember as well that what he's doing here is he's showing us what they look like to distinguish them from the good plants, because part of the process of knowing how to uproot, the things that are bad in our lives is being able to clearly identify them from the good. We're now up to chapter 6. Thank you, Tzvi, for lending us this book. And Tzvi might join us here soon as part of the live audience. Ah, little prince. So it was, gradually, that I came to understand your melancholy little life. For a long time, your only pleasure had been to watch the gently setting sun. I learned this new detail on the morning of the 4th day when you said to me, I'm very fond of sunsets. Let us go this moment and look at a sunset. But we shall have to wait. Wait for what? Wait until it's time for the sun to set. Here's a drawing of them seeing the sunset. At first, you seemed very taken aback. Then you laughed at yourself and said, I still keep thinking I'm at home. Just so, for as everyone knows, when it is noon in the United States, the sun is setting over France. If you could get to France in a twinkling, you could watch a sunset right now. Unfortunately, France is rather too far away, but on your tiny planet, little prince, you had only to move your chair a few steps. You could watch night fall wherever you liked. Because his planet was so tiny, he could watch sunset all the time. One day you said, I watched the sunset 43 times. And a little later you added, when one is that sad, you can get to love the sunset. Were you that sad then on that day of the 43 sunsets? But the prince made no answer. That's a beautiful little note there, that sometimes we turn to nature. We turn towards the immortal and eternal to find solace in our sadness. And sometimes when we're so desperately looking for that, it means that we're really sad. If we have to see a sunset 43 times in one day, it might be even too sad for us to talk about. Chapter 7, actually. On the 5th day, thanks to the sheep, as always, the secret of the little prince's life was finally revealed to me. Without preamble, as though voicing aloud a problem he had long meditated in silence, he abruptly asked, if sheep eat small bushes, will it therefore eat flowers? A sheep eats everything in its path. Even flowers with thorns? Yes, even flowers with thorns. So what's the use of thorns? I did not know the answer. At that moment, I was very busy trying to unscrew a bolt that had gotten stuck in my engine. I was very worried, for my breakdown was beginning to look fairly serious, and the low reserves of drinking water made me fear the worst. You're outvoted here. So, what's the use of thorns? The little prince never gave up on a question until once he had asked it. I was irritated with my bolt, so I said the first thing that entered my head. Thorns are of no use whatsoever. They are simply a flower's way of being spiteful. Oh, there was a silence. Then he retorted with a kind of bitterness. I don't believe you. Flowers are weak. They are naive. They reassure themselves as best they can. They think they are being frightening with their thorns. I made no answer. At that moment, I was saying to myself, if this bolt resists any longer, I'm going to knock it out with the hammer. The little prince interrupted my thoughts once more. But as for you, you think that the flowers... Not at all, not at all. I think nothing. I told you the first thing that entered my head. As for me, I happen to have very serious matters to attend to. He stared at me in amazement. Serious matters? He looked at me. Hammer in hand, fingers black with grease, bent over some machine that seemed to him merely ugly. You are talking like a grown-up. This made me feel a little ashamed. But he continued relentlessly. You are confusing everything. You are mixing up everything. He was truly very angry. He was shaking his golden locks in the breeze. I know a planet where a certain purple-faced gentleman lives. He never inhaled the scent of a flower. He has never looked at a star. He has never loved anyone. He has never done anything except add up figures. And all day long, just like you, he repeats to himself, I'm a serious person. I'm a serious person. And this makes him swell up with pride. But he is not a man. He's a mushroom. A what? A mushroom. The little prince was now quite pale with anger. For millions of years, flowers have been growing thorns. For millions of years, sheep have been eating flowers nonetheless. And is it not a serious matter to try and understand why flowers go to such trouble producing thorns that will never be of any use to them? Is it not important, the war between sheep and flowers? Is it not more serious and more important than the calculations of a fat, red-faced gentleman? And if I personally know a flower which is unique in the world, which exists nowhere except on my planet, but which one sheep can destroy in a single bite, just like that, one morning, without even noticing what he's doing, well, I suppose that too is of no importance. He flustered, then continued. If someone loves a flower, of which there is only one example among all the millions and millions of stars, that is enough to make him happy when he looks up at the night sky, he says to himself, somewhere out there is my flower. But if a sheep eats the flower, it is as though all the stars have suddenly gone out. And I suppose that too is of no importance. That is really nice to have one flower where knowing that it's out there is enough to make one happy. But if that flower is not there, then millions of stars are meaningless too. Hey, let's say I want to say a shot for Shimon, a good friend of mine who just joined us here, and for his one flower, Shilat. They should have many years of happiness together. He could not say any more. His words were choked by sobbing. Night had fallen. I had let my tools drop to the ground. I no longer cared a fig for my hammer or my belt, or about thirst or about dying. On one star, one planet, this planet, the Earth, there was a little prince in need of consoling. I took him in my arms. I cradled him. I told him, the flower you love is not in danger. I'll give you a muzzle for your sheep. I'll draw you a shield to put around your flower. I did not really know what to say. I felt like a blundering idiot. I do not know how to reach him, where to catch up with him. It is such a secret place, the land of tears. Next chapter, chapter 8. I soon learned to know more about this flower. The flowers on the little prince's planet had always been very straightforward. Adorned with just a single row of petals, they took up no room and troubled nobody. They would appear one morning in the grass only to fade away in the evening. But one day, a very particular flower had sprung up, from a seed blown from who knows where, and the little prince had kept a close eye on this shoot, which was so unlike the others that it might have been a new strain of baobab. But the shrub soon stopped growing and started getting ready to produce a flower. The little prince watched the growth of an enormous bud, convinced that some miraculous apparition must follow. Closeted in her green room, however, this flower took an age preparing herself to be beautiful. She chose her colors with care. She dressed slowly, adjusting her petals one by one. She did not want to come into the world all crumpled like the field poppies. She wanted to appear only in the full radiance of her beauty. That's right, she was very stylish. Her mysterious preparations lasted for days and days. Then, one morning, exactly at sunrise, she suddenly revealed herself. And, after laboring with such painstaking precision, she merely said with a yawn, "Oh, I am scarcely awake. You must excuse me. I am still all disheveled." At this, the little prince could not contain his admiration. "But you are so beautiful." "Aren't I just?" replied the flower sweetly. "And to think that I was born at the same moment as the sun?" The little prince soon guessed that this flower was not too modest, but how thrilling she was. Surely, here's a trivia question for you. Flat roses, in particular, are a strong theme of symbolism amongst the world's religious traditions and many mystical traditions. Let us see how many traditions we can think of that reference the rose in particular, and be specific about your citation. Let's see. If we can get to 10 references, I'll have another shot with whoever gets the 10th one. Oh, we already have one before I even asked. Oh, we have 3. I should have put the number higher. Let's continue reading and see what you guys come up with. I'm thinking of a good 2 or 3 in my head already. Shortly, it must be time for breakfast, she announced shortly. Would you be so kind as to attend to me? And the little prince, all flustered, fetched a watering can of cool water and proceeded to wait upon the flower. From the beginning, then, she began to torment him with her somewhat touchy vanity. One day, for example, talking about her 4 thorns, she said to the little prince, "Let them come, the tigers with their claws." "There are no tigers on my planet," the little prince interrupted. "But in any case, tigers do not eat weeds." "I am not a weed," the flower murmured sweetly. "Forgive me. Nor am I the least afraid of tigers. But I do have a horror of drafts. You wouldn't happen to have a screen on hand?" "A horror of drafts? That is bad luck for a planet," the little prince remarked, and added, "Bad luck for a plant," the little prince remarked, and added to himself, "This flower is very complicated." Here is the little picture of him tending to the flower and of him watering the flower. In the evening, you may place a glass dome over me. It is very cold on your planet. It lacks convenience. Where I come from. Here she interrupted herself, for she had come in the shape of a seed and could not possibly know anything about other worlds. Ashamed of letting herself be caught on the verge of such a naive lie, she coughed 2 or 3 times to make the little prince feel at fault. "What about the screen?" "I was going to fetch it, but you were talking to me." At which she pretended to cough once more so that he might suffer some remorse just the same. Ooh, this is a here's some pictures. There's a tiger and the rose, and there's a little glass thing in the rose. This is a high maintenance little rose. Did we get up to 10? I don't think we got to 10 yet. Come on. You guys can pull out some more references. So it was that the little prince, despite the willing nature of his love, had soon come to doubt his flower. He had taken at face value her words of no importance, and they made him very unhappy. "I should not have listened to her," he confided to me one day. "You must never listen to flowers. You must simply gaze at them and breathe them in." My flower perfumed my whole planet, but I was unable to appreciate her. All that nonsense about claws, which I found so irritating, ought to have endeared her to me. He continued his confidences. "In those days I understood nothing. I should have judged by her deeds and not by her words. She cast her fragrance around me and brightened my life. I should have never run away. I should have guessed the tenderness behind her poor little stratagems. Flowers are so contradictory, and I was too young to know how to love her." Wow. This was interesting chapter. This is water, by the way. What's going on in this chapter here? So we have this rose that we know from later on that he's deeply enamored with and in love with, and it brightens the whole universe for him. And the universe and all her stars are meaningless without the rose. But yet, their first encounter, although he's taken by the rose's beauty, by her beauty, is somewhat complicated because she has all these demands upon him, and he takes them seriously without seeing them for what they are, which is her own insecurities, perhaps, the author recommends. What was the phrase that he used here? That there was a tenderness behind her poor little stratagems. And instead of focusing on her words and what she was saying, he should have rather focused on on how he felt in the rose's presence and how she made his whole life beautiful and filled with perfume. This is an interesting one, and there's definitely space to think about this when we think about love and we think about what it does for us. And sometimes there is a naivety where we think that when we find the one, the rose which lights up our world, everything is perfect and everything is dandy. But then when the rose starts to speak and make demands upon us, how do we take those and how do we see them? Is his advice to judge her by her deeds and not by her words the right way to go about it? Interesting questions to speculate upon here. But there's definitely a sense of tenderness in that chapter of seeing how what may in retrospect have been the biggest blessing may have at the time seemed to have been a painful, thorny challenge. Excuse the pun. Let's see how many roses we came up with. We have golden flower from China. Okay, almost a rose. Rose of Sharon, Rosicrucian, Rose Cross, Rosy Cross, very good. The flower which the Buddha showed, yes. I mean, is it a rose? Not necessarily. I was thinking more of roses specifically. The rose of Aphrodite. I think we got like 5 here. We're like halfway there. Maybe we'll have half a shot for the. Hey, Gabrielle, thanks for joining us. Shavua Tov. Thank you, Ali, for sharing that little background information. Chapter 9. I believe that for his escape, he took advantage of a flight of migrating wild birds. On the morning of his departure, he set his planet in good order. He carefully swept out his active volcanoes. He had 2 active volcanoes, which were very useful for heating up breakfast in the mornings. He also had an extinct volcano. But he used to say, one never knows, so he swept out the extinct volcano too. If they are well swept, volcanoes burn slowly and steadily without erupting. Volcano eruptions are like chimney fires. Here on Earth, we are, of course, far too small to sweep out our volcanoes, which, of course, is why they cause us endless trouble. If you can take care of something before it erupts, it might not be as catastrophic when it does. With a little feeling of sadness, the little prince the prince, here's a painting of him tending to his planet before leaving. He's sweeping out his live and extinct volcanoes. You can see he's cooking something on top of his volcano. Ali is sharing some very helpful insights about the author and how the story came to be written. Thank you, Ali. With a feeling of sadness, the little prince then uprooted the last little shoots of baobab. He was thinking he might never return here. And on this last morning, the familiar task all seems very precious to him, so that when he watered his flower for the last time, he prepared to place her under her glass dome. He found that he was on the verge of tears. Goodbye, he said to the flower, but she did not reply. Goodbye, he repeated. The flower coughed, but this was not on account of her cold. I have been an idiot, she said to him at last. I ask your forgiveness. Try to be. He was taken aback by the absence of reproaches. He stood there, all disconcerted, the glass dome suspended in mid-air. He could not understand the sweet composure of hers. Yes, of course I love you, the flower said to him at last. You have no idea, which is my fault. It is of no consequence, but you have been as foolish as I. Try to be happy, and leave that glass alone. I don't want it anymore. But what about the wind? My cold is not as bad as all that. The cool night air will do me good. I'm a flower. But what about insects? I'll simply have to put up with 2 or 3 caterpillars if I want to meet some butterflies. I've heard that they are very beautiful. Otherwise, who will visit me? You'll be far away. As for wild animals, I'm not afraid of them. I have my claws. And she innocently showed her 4 thorns. Then she added, Don't hang about like that. It's irritating. You've decided to go. Go on. For she did not want him to see her tears. She was such a haughty flower. So there you have it. The little prince takes absence of his little planet and of his little flower. And there she is, covered in her little glass dome, which she doesn't need after all. The whole time she was putting on this act of vulnerability to try and procure some of his care and compassion and this act of tenderness, this act that we sometimes put on when we're trying to get the affection of others. But really, she was fine. She was fine without her vase and without her screen. And when he's finally leaving, she wants to have the capacity to be visited. And I love that line, that she'll have to put up with 2 or 3 caterpillars if she wants to meet some butterflies. Thank you, Tzvi. Yeah, sometimes you have to put up with caterpillars if you want to meet some butterflies. That's a very nice little lesson. Let us see what is happening in this chat. Tzvi, thank you so much for giving us your book. Tzvi just came and he brought a beer in addition to a book. Tzvi is definitely a little butterfly in my life. Thank you, Tzvi.
Secret Unity, I've already found it.
Shade. Okay, let's see what's happening in the little chat here. Miran says that she loves Little Prince. Yay. Thank you. We do too. Oh, we have another Rose reference from Sarah. Alice in Wonderland. Okay. It's funny actually that you mentioned Alice in Wonderland because the person who introduced this book makes comparisons between this book and Alice in Wonderland a whole bunch. Oh, that's nice. Okay. He found himself in the vicinity of asteroids 325, 326, 327, 328, 329, and 330. So he started by visiting these to find some occupation and to educate himself. The first was inhabited by a king. Clad in purple and ermine, the king was sitting on a very simple yet majestic throne. Ah, here comes a subject, exclaimed the king when he caught sight of the little prince. And the little prince said to himself, How can he recognize me? He has never seen me before. The little prince did not realize that for kings, the world is very simple. All men are subjects. Come near us that I may see you better, said the king, who felt very proud at last to be a king in the eyes of somebody. The little prince looked around him quickly for somewhere to sit, but the entire planet was taken up by the king's magnificent ermine robe. So he remained standing, and he yawned. It is contrary to etiquette to yawn in the presence of a king, said the monarch. I forbid you to yawn. I can't help myself, replied the little prince, quite abashed. I've had a long journey, and have not yet slept. In which case, said the king, I command you to yawn. It is years since I've seen anyone yawning. Yawns are, for me, an object of curiosity. Hurry up, yawn again. That is a command. Now I felt intimidated. I can't, just at the moment, murmured the little prince, going very red in the face. Replied the king. In that case, I command you sometimes to yawn, and at other times to... He muttered something and seemed put off. For what this king fundamentally insisted upon was that his authority be respected. He would not tolerate disobedience. He was an absolute monarch. At the same time, since at heart he was a very good man, he made his commands reasonable. Were I, he would often say, were I to command a general to change into a seabird, and were the general not to obey, it would not be the general's fault. It would be my fault. May I sit down now? The little prince inquired timidly. I command you to sit, replied the king majestically drawing in a fold of his ermine mantle. Here's a picture of the king. So this little king basically has no one else on his little planet, and therefore he has to exert his authority somehow. So when the little prince comes to the little king, he tells him to yawn, and then not to yawn, and then sometimes to yawn, and then to sit. He's just desperate to have someone listen to him. Kind of sad. Oh yeah? I'm informed that we have a new subscriber, which means we have our own rules here and our own commands, just like the king commands, where you have we're gonna drink to the new subscriber, and we hope that they find much value and community and camaraderie at the channel. The little prince was astonished. This planet was minuscule. Over what precisely could the king be said to reign? Sire, he said, I beg to be excused for asking you a question. I command you to ask me a question, the king interrupted hurriedly. Sire, over what do you reign? Over everything, replied the king, with huge simplicity. Over everything. With a quiet gesture, the king indicated his planet, the other planets, and all the stars. Over all that? Asked the prince. Over all that, replied the king. For not only was he an absolute monarch, he was a universal monarch. And do the stars obey you? Naturally, said the king. They obey promptly. I do not tolerate indiscipline. The little prince marveled at such power. Had he wielded it himself, he'd have been able to sit and watch nor 44 sunsets in a single day, but 72, even 100, even 2,000, without ever having to move his chair. And since, at the thought of his little forsaken planet, he felt himself become sad, he plucked up the courage to ask a favor of the king. I would like to see a sunset. Do me this kindness. Command the sun to set. I don't know if I'm going to read out any monologues, but you're welcome to type, and whoever wants to read is welcome to read. Where just a little bit of information here. The little prince, as you may know, some of you may know the story already. He goes to visit many different planets, and each planet he meets an absurd different adult, and he learns something absurd about their adulthood. And those are all reflections of things that we may have within us that we can look at and examine together with the little prince and see maybe what we can do about being less of an adult about those things. So with the king, it's something about his need to be respected and his need to have authority over things and people. So the little prince asked the king to command the sun to set. Were I to command a general to fly over from one tower to the next like a butterfly, or to write a tragedy, or to change into a seabird, and were this general not to carry out my command, which of us would be in the wrong? He or I? You would be, said the little prince firmly. Correct. One must require of each what each is able to give, continued the king. Authority rests first of all upon reason. If you command your subjects to go and throw themselves into the sea, there will be a revolution. I have the right to demand obedience because my orders are reasonable. And my sunset, the little king reminded him, for he never forgot a question once he had asked it. You shall have your sunset. I shall insist upon it, but I shall wait, in keeping with the science of my government, until conditions are favorable. When will that be? Inquired the little prince. Replied the king, consulting an outsized almanac. That will be at that will be this evening at around 20 minutes to 8. Then you shall see how I'm obeyed. Nice. The little prince yawned. He was regretting his missed sunset. He was already beginning to be a little bored. I have nothing further to do here, he said to the king, so I shall be on my way. Don't leave, replied the king, who was very proud of having a subject. Don't leave. I shall make you a minister. A minister of what? Of justice. But there's nobody here to judge. We do not know for certain, said the king. I have not yet made a complete tour of my kingdom. I am very old. There is no room here for a stagecoach, and it tires me to walk. But I've already looked, said the little prince, bending around to glance around the other side of the planet. There is no one over there either. Sarah Staypaid says that she wants a magical butterfly that brings her a cold beer. If we all only had a magical butterfly like Svi in our lives. No, I'm good, thank you. In that case, so the little prince went to the other side and saw that there was no pupils to judge there either. In that case, you shall judge yourself, replied the king. That is the most difficult of all. It is far more difficult to judge oneself than to judge others. Touché. If you succeed in judging yourself correctly, then you are truly a man of wisdom. I like this. This is interesting that the adults in the story, who were kind of rich, also have some wisdom to share. For example, the hardest person to judge is to judge yourself. But I can judge myself anywhere, said the little prince. I don't need to live on this planet. Said the king. I do believe that somewhere on my planet there is an old rat. I hear him at night. You may have to judge this old rat. From time to time, you will condemn him to death. Hence, his life will depend on your justice. But you will reprieve him each time so as to save him. He's the only one we have. So don't actually kill him, because we need to keep sentencing him to death. But I don't like condemning to death, said the little prince. And I really do think I should be going now. No, said the king. Having completed his preparations, but with no wish to distress the old monarch, the little prince said, if your majesty wishes, he is playing with the king's logic. As the king made no reply, the little prince hesitated. Then with a sigh, he took his leave. I make you my ambassador, cried the king hurriedly after him. He had a wonderful air of authority. Grown-ups are very strange, the little prince said to himself as he continued on his voyage. Chapter 11. Thank you, Tvi, for lending us the book. The second planet was inhabited by a conceited man. Here comes an admirer to visit me, cried out the conceited man from afar, as soon as he caught sight of the little prince, for to the conceited man, all other men are admirers. Here is a picture of the conceited man. It's quite interesting that there are no women in this book, only men. Good day, said the little prince. That's a funny hat you're wearing. That, it's for women, replied the conceited man, for waving when other people cheer me. Unfortunately, nobody ever passes this way. Oh, really, said the little prince, who did not really understand. Clap your hands once against the other, the conceited man now instructed. The little man waved. After 5 minutes of this exercise, the little prince grew tired of the monotony of the game. And for you to lower your hat, he asked, what do I have to do? But the conceited man did not hear him. Conceited men only ever hear praise. Da, 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 da. Do you really admire me a great deal? He asked the little prince. What does admire mean? To admire means to admit that I am the handsomest, best dressed, the richest, the most intelligent on this planet. Being that he's the only person on the planet, there's not much competition. But you're all alone on this planet. Do me this kindness. Admire me all the same. I admire you, said the prince, with a slight shrug of his shoulders. But how can that be of any interest to you? The little prince went away Grown-ups are decidedly very strange, he merely observed to himself as he continued on his voyage. I just want to reflect on this chapter a little, although one person, Tzvi, asked us not to reflect. We're going to reflect anyways.
That was a girl.
Hmm?
The flower was a girl.
I think so, yeah. The flower is the girl. Okay. Tzvi corrects me, says there was a woman in the story. It's the flower. Alyssa's correction. So I think there's something interesting here, which is that this conceited man is clearly quite absurd. But besides we're seeing the absurdity of the conceited man, which is important, and the conceited man is obviously a caricature for our own conceits that are absurd, there's something beneath the absurdity, which is that simply that he wants to be admired. And there's something very sweet and endearing and humble about that. And if the conceited man, like the rose, was able to be vulnerable and honest and say, I just want your admiration, maybe he wouldn't be so absurd after all. The next planet was inhabited by a drinker. We are in good company, my friends. Chapter 12. This visit was very short, but it plunged the little prince into a deep melancholy. Oh no. What are you doing here? Oh, let's see the drinker. Here he is. Can we see him? Nice. What are you doing here? He said to the drinker, whom he found settled silently before a collection of empty bottles and a collection of full bottles. I'm drinking, said the drinker, naturally, with a mournful air. Why are you drinking? Asked the little prince. To forget, replied the drinker. To forget what? Inquired the little prince, who was ready to feel sorry for him. To forget that I am ashamed, confessed the drinker, hanging his head. Ashamed of what? Persisted the little prince, who wanted to help him. Ashamed of drinking, concluded the drinker, retreating into permanent silence. The little prince went away perplexed. Grown-ups are decidedly very, very odd, he said to himself as he continued on his voyage. This is a really beautiful chapter because drinking is obviously only one form of escape of many escapes that we adults have at our disposal. Another form of escapism from facing our challenges and difficulties. But I mean, it often takes years and years of therapy to come to the clarity that the little prince comes to in a few short lines, which is that he's drinking not because of any other reason. He's drinking because he's ashamed. And he's ashamed because he's drinking, which there probably was something first that he was ashamed of that caused him to drinking. But now all that's left is the shame of using drink as an escape or using any escape as an escape from his problem. But there's sort of this lasering right through the issue where we see the sad image of the drinker, and we see through their sadness to the shame that lies beneath it, and the shame which is tied up in their addiction, into their own cycles of self-destructivity. And for anyone that thinks that Zevi is a drinker, I will have you know that Zevi drinks alcohol very moderately, only in good social company, and I consider you, my friends here, good social company. And last time we drank a bit too much because I overpromised how much I would drink with the subscribers. But I really, honestly, like I don't really get drunk too much in life, even though it's part of my Hasidic culture and heritage. So I would be culturally excused in doing so. But yes, back to a serious topic here, which is not about my own drinking issues. Thank you, Yawings, for bringing that up. Maiden Monster says that there's a reciprocal narrowing of addiction, that when we escape our issues with addiction, we lose our capacity to see ways out, and the addiction itself becomes something which pulls us further into addiction. There's a great book from Eric Fromm called The Art of Loving, where he talks about the fundamental human need and drives that cause people to escape into things like addiction, and how that can be channeled better into directions of love and unity and mysticism. It's a very mystical book. I recommend reading it. The shame, Thielen says that the shame of the drinker is a good foil to the conceited man. Honor seems to be at the root of identity. Yeah, that's a nice little theme there to look at, the relationship between the honor, the admiration that the previous fellow wants, and perhaps the lack of admiration that leads the addict, the drinker, into their misery. The fourth planet belonged to a businessman. Chapter 11. No, chapter 13. They're in Roman numerals, excuse me. This man was so busy that he did not even raise his head at the little prince's arrival, which is very interesting because all the other previous characters were very enamored by the prince and wanted the prince's attention and approval, it seems. But this fellow did not even raise his head. Here he is. Good day, said the latter. Your cigarette has gone out. 3 and 2 make 5. 5 and 7 make 11. 11 and 3 make 15. Good day. 15 and 7 make 22. 22 and 6 make 28. I have no time to relight it. 26 and 5 make 31. Phew. That makes 501,622,731. 5 million what? Are you still here? Are you still there? 501 million, I can't remember what. I have too much to do. I happen to be a serious person. I have no time for idle chatter. 2 and 5. 501 million what? Repeated the little prince, who had never in his life given up on a question once he had asked it. I was going to say, once he asks a question, he ain't giving up on it. The businessman raised his head. That was my hand. Let's do that one more time. The businessman raised his head. During the 44 years I've lived on this planet, I've been disturbed only on 3 occasions. The first was 22 years ago, when some May bug dropped from heaven knows where. He made the most dreadful din that resounded all over the place. I made 4 mistakes in my addition. The second time was 11 years ago, brought on by an attack of rheumatitis. I need exercise. The third is standing right in front of me now. As I was saying, then 501 million of what? Wow. The businessman could see that there was no hope of being left in peace. Millions of those small objects you sometimes see up in the sky. Flies? No. Small glittering objects. Bees? No. Small gilded objects that set idle minds daydreaming. Though I, for my part, happen to be a very serious person, I have no time for daydreaming. Ah, you mean stars. Just so, stars. And what can you do? I just want to make a very unrelated comment here. My mum is Australian, my dad is American. So sometimes I say words like my mum and sometimes like my dad. So a word like stars, my mum says stars. My dad says stars. So sometimes I say stars and sometimes I say stars. And people are very confused by my identity. So I said both there just in case, just so that everyone understood. Yes, stars. Thank you, Yellings. We have a new suggestion, which is every time he says the word planet to take a drink. You know what? I'm going to try doing that. I don't know how many times you'll say planet, but I'm going to try. That's not a promise. Okay. Oh, we have a new subscriber? Oh, we're playing both games now? Subscribers and planets? No. It's either planets or subscribers. I'm not drinking for both. Okay. I happen to be... Oh, you mean stars. Just so, stars. And what can you do with 500 million stars? 501,622,731. I happen to be a serious person, a precise person. And what do you do with these stars? Do with them? Yes. Nothing. I own them. You own the stars? Yes. But I've seen a king who kings do not own, kings reign over. There's a large difference. And of what use is it you to own the stars? Its use is to make me rich. And of what use is it to you to be rich? to buy more stars, if there were any more to be discovered. This fellow, the little prince said to himself, reasons a little like my drunkard. Owns stuff to buy more stuff, drinks because he's drinking. Nevertheless, he had a few more questions to ask. Sarah has been drinking every time he said stars, which was a unfortunate word to choose in this chapter. Make sure to drink some water along with your alcohol. Yes, Ali, a humble sinner, more than an arrogant worshipper. I may be a sinner. I can't see how. Okay. Nevertheless, he had a few more questions to ask. How can you own the stars? That's a great question. I don't get how ownership works either. To whom do they belong? Snapped the businessman peevishly. I don't know. To nobody? Then they belong to me, since I thought of it first. Okay. Is that all it takes? Naturally. When you find a diamond that belongs to no one, it belongs to you. When you discover an island that belongs to no one, it belongs to you. When you are the first to have an idea, you take out a patent on it, it belongs to you. And the stars belong to me because nobody before ever thought of owning them. Then I count them and I recount them. Scoff, indeed. I myself own a flower, he persisted. Oh, this is an interesting chapter. You want to type in the chat that we're reconnecting or something?
Kaboom.
Oh. Okay, we're back. This chapter, if it had a name, would be called, and if the name was in Yiddish, would be called the Lamplighter, which is lamplighter in Yiddish. Chapter 14. The fifth planet was very strange. It was the smallest of all. There was just enough room to accommodate. Oh, did we say the word planet? Oh. I thought someone else would be on top of watching out for when we said planet. We switched our drinking rules from new subscribers to when we say the word planet. I don't know why. It was the audience request. So, l'chaim to the fifth planet. Okay. The fifth planet was very strange. It was the smallest of all. There was just enough room to accommodate a street lamp and a lamplighter. The little prince could not imagine what use there might be somewhere in the heavens on a planet with neither houses nor people for a street lamp and a lamplighter. I'm gonna try keep up with the we just said planet again. You know what? This is the new rule. I'm not going to be watching out for when we say planet. If one of you comments that we said planet, then I will drink. So no one gets that planet because I called it out first. You have to call it out before me. Okay? This may well be absurd. Touche. Nevertheless, he's not as absurd as the king or the conceited man or the businessman or the drinker. At least his work has some meaning. Interesting. When he lights up his street lamp, it is as though he were bringing a new star to life or a flower. When he puts out his street lamp, he's putting out the flower or the star to sleep. It is a beautiful occupation. This is really fun. Are we back on? We're back. Okay. You have to repeat it. Very good. Thank you. But why? You have just lit it up. Those are the orders, replied the lamplighter. I don't understand, said the little. There is nothing to understand, said the lamplighter. Orders are orders. Good morning. Did I show you the picture of the lamplighter? I can't remember. Here he is. And the caption is, it's a terrible way to earn a living. And he extinguished his street lamp. Then he mopped his forehead with a red check handkerchief. It's a terrible way to earn a living. In the old days, it was reasonable. I extinguished in the morning and lit up in the evening. I had the rest of my day for relaxing and the rest of the night for sleeping. And since that time, the orders have changed. The orders have not changed, said the lamplighter. That is the tragedy of it. Year by year, the planet has been revolving more and more rapidly, but the orders have not changed. Haha. Sometimes the rules stay the same, even though the circumstances are different. Think about that. You know who I'm talking about. Tell me when we're back. A month has already gone by since we started talking. A month? Yes. 30 minutes, 30 days. Good. As he watched the little prince lamplighter, who was so faithful to his orders, he remembered the sunsets he used out in early days. Simply lamp. This fellow, said the little prince to himself, as he continued on his travels, would be laughed at by all the others, by the king, by the conceited man, by the drinker, by the businessman. However, he's the only one who does not seem to he's the only one who does not seem to me ridiculous. Perhaps this is because he's preoccupied with something other than himself. He breathed a sigh of regret and went on thinking. If he's the only one I could have made my friend, or he's the only one I could have made my friend, but his planet is altogether too small. There's no room for two of us. But the little prince did not like to admit that he was sorry to leave this planet, most of all because it was blessed with. Oh no. Force sunsets every 24 hours. Okay, this was a very. We have something about Consuelo. Yeah, I'm so glad, DS, that you found us. Yeah, I'm sorry about the internet, but hopefully you guys will stick through. Blah blah said that this channel has helped me grow in my faith and love for theology. That's really sweet. Thank you. I want to share a reflection about this chapter because it's hitting very close to home for me. Thank you, blah blah. I will try to hold my drink. This is like a very niche reference, but basically, I grew up in a Hasidic community. Many of you know that. One of the nicknames for the Chassid is the lamplighter, the lepternisht, which we said before in Yiddish, the one who goes out into the cold, into the dark, to light up a light so that others can see the way to where they need to go. And there's a certain sense of self-sacrifice in that process. And anyone who grew up in my community, this label of the lamplighter is something which they will very much resonate with. If there's anyone here in the chat that grew up in the Chabad community, you can back me up here. That would be nice. So what's interesting here, though, is that the lamplighter is doing their duty in a very faithful way, and the prince admires that they're in service of something other than themselves. They're doing their mission, they're doing their shlichut for the other, and it's beautiful. They're bringing light to the world. But this lamplighter in particular is doing it in a very absurd way because there were rules that were set into place, which were great rules, but the circumstances just don't fit those rules anymore because the whole world is moving at a faster pace, literally, and yet the lamplighter is still doing what they think has to be done because they don't have what is it that they're lacking? They're lacking the self-confidence, they're lacking the chutzpah, to the audacity to rethink the rules. Christopher says that they're too busy to make space for others on there because their planet is too small. Their vision of reality itself is too myopic. So this chapter hit home for me in a very big way, that the prince feels like he could be friends with this person because they are living for something beyond themselves, but they're doing it in a way that's so out of touch, literally out of touch with reality, literally out of touch with the shape of their planet, the size of their planet. Thank you. Yawing says the Shamish. Yeah. So this was an interesting chapter for me to ponder. I wonder if you guys had any interesting personal reflections on this chapter and where it landed for you. You can share in the chat. Perhaps this is because he's preoccupied with something other than himself. He's the only one I could have made fun with, but it's too small for the two of us. Okay, he was sorry to leave, but because it was blessed with so many sunsets. So the prince did like the sunsets, but whereas for the prince, as Fee pointed out, the sunsets represented beauty and rest. For the lamplighter, sunsets. This is also a nice idea that the lamplighter was not able to stop and see the beauty of the sunsets because the sunset only identified, only signified for him obligation. Think about this perhaps in the context of religion. Many people pray when the sunset comes, and is prayer at a time of sunset a time of reflection and beauty and introspection, or is it a time of obligation? That's a very interesting question. Chapter 15. The sixth planet was 10 times larger.
Definitely.
That is a bona fide
I
planet.
definitely have to get another beer.
The sixth planet was 10 times larger than the previous one.
This one.
Yeah. It was inhabited by an old gentleman who wrote voluminous books. I'll show you a picture in just a second. Ooh, l'chaim. Okay, here is a picture of the old man. Everyone sees? Okay. It was inhabited by an old man who wrote voluminous books. Well, here comes an explorer, he exclaimed to himself when he caught sight of the little prince. The little prince sat down at the table and panted a little. He had already traveled so very far. Where do you come from? Said the old man. What is this big book? Said the little prince. What do you do here? I am a geographer, said the old man. What is a geographer? A geographer is a learned man who knows where all the seas, rivers, towns, mountains, and deserts are located. Now that is interesting, said the little prince. Here is a real profession at last. And he looked around him at the geographer's planet.
That's a planet.
Nice. There we are. Oh, my cap is still on. Oopsies. That's a laptop. L'chaim to the geographer's planet. All right. It is certainly beautiful, your planet. Does it have oceans?
That's a planet. We're gonna let it ride.
I can't tell, said the geographer. Ah, the little prince was disappointed. And mountains? I can't tell, said the geographer. And towns and rivers and deserts? I can't tell you that either, said the geographer. But you're a geographer. Quite so, said the geographer. But I'm not it's not the geographer's job to go around counting off the towns, rivers, and mountains, seas, and oceans and deserts. The geographer is far too important to go sauntering about. He does not leave his desk, but there he sits and receives the explorers. He asks them questions and notes down what they recollect of their travels. And if the recollections of any of them seem interesting, the geographer will order an inquiry into the moral character of the explorer concerned. Why is that? Because an explorer who told lies would cause havoc with the geography books. So would an explorer who drank too much. Why is that? Said the little prince. Because drunkards see double. So the explorer would record two mountains in a place where there is only one. I know somebody, said the little prince, who would make a bad explorer. The drinker. I can well believe it. Then, when the explorer's morals are shown to be sound, we hold an inquiry into his discovery. Someone goes and looks? No, that would be too complicated. Instead, we inquire the explorer to furnish proofs. For example, if the discovery in question is that of a large mountain, we require him to bring back some large stones. That makes sense because large mountains have large stones. The geographer suddenly became excited. But you, for example, you come from far away. You are an explorer. You can describe your planet to me. And opening his register, the geographer began to sharpen his pencil. For the narratives of explorers are entered first in pencil, but then they can be entered in ink. But before they can be entered in ink, the explorer must furnish proofs. Well, said the geographer expectantly. Oh, where I come from is not very interesting, said the little prince. Everything is so small. I have 3 volcanoes. 2 are active, and a third is extinct. But one never knows. One never knows, said the geographer. I also have a flower. We do not take note of flowers, said the geographer. Why ever not? They're prettier than everything else. Because flowers are ephemeral. What does ephemeral mean? Geography books, said the geographer, are the most precious of all books. They never go out of date. It is very rare for a mountain to change positions. It is very rare for an ocean to be emptied of its water. We record that which is eternal. But extinct volcanoes can come back to life. The little prince interrupted. What does ephemeral mean? Whether volcanoes are dead or alive, it amounts to the same as far as we are concerned, said the geographer. What amounts for us is the mountain, and that does not change. But what does ephemeral mean? Repeated the little prince, who had never in his entire life given up on a question once he had asked it. It means that which is threatened with impending death. My flower is threatened. My flower is threatened with impending death? Certainly. My flower is ephemeral, the little prince said to himself, and she only has 4 thorns to defend herself against the world. And I have left her all alone on my planet. It was his first impulse of regret, but he took heart again. What do you recommend me to visit next? He asked. The planet Earth, replied the geographer. It has a good reputation. And the little prince. You guys are not paying attention because I read past like half a dozen planets right there.
I had to slow down. Also, you need a hemship.
I got one.
Okay. The planet Earth, replied the geographer, has a good reputation. The little prince ran away thinking of his flower, his ephemeral flower. I like Ali's suggestion that the planet itself represents the author's own heart and mind that he's left behind and the things that are there. Let us think about this chapter for a second before we continue to Earth. So, one thing which caught my attention here, amongst many, is that the distinction between the geographer and the explorer. And the geographer never explores, not even their own planet, which means that they're strangers to their own land, even though they're the experts of it. So this is interesting. I mean, over at the channel, we spend a lot of time with scholars, right? So the geographer is one form of scholar. We hang out with lots of historians and philosophers and things. And there's this accusation that the scholar themselves is not the explorer, never actually goes and visits the planets which they're talking about. There's this accusation, or this debate amongst the scholars of mystics, whether the scholar themselves has to go and have some experience of the mystical, or whether they're exploring the thing itself will cause them to be partial and therefore to not be good scholars. And over here, the little prince doesn't so much criticize the geographer for divorcing himself from the explorer. And the prince as well, whereas he leaves all the other planets by saying how strange indeed the adults are. Over here, he doesn't say that. He's just left thinking of his flower. So what is happening here with there's no explicit critique of the geographer, but there are some implicit messages here which we could take. This question of ephemerality, of what do we consider valuable and worth noting on our maps? right? So for the little prince, for him, the most important and precious and beautiful thing in the world is something which is not even worth a footnote in the books of geography, which is supposed to be eternal. This question of what do we value as individuals and as a society is again coming up in this chapter. On to chapter. This is a very short chapter. Chapter 16. So the seventh planet he visited was the Earth.
So every chapter has a planet.
Every chapter has a planet. True words have never been spoken. To my chagrin. L'chaim to all you planets.
How?
Keep planeting. Oh, Justin wants to know. Oh, Justin, it's nice to see you here. What isn't ephemeral? That's a very good point. Because in the large scope of things, everything's ephemeral. And the question is, I think this is a question of value, of where do we place our focus, right? On what spectrum of temporality do we consider to be temporary, to be ephemeral, or to be permanent? And why? Okay. And why? So the seventh planet he visited was the Earth. For anyone that doesn't know, this is our planet. We're talking about planet Earth here. So welcome back.
Is there like commentary on like the actual planets and the characters on them and like?
There's tons of commentary. Yeah, I haven't really explored much of it. Okay. Yeah, Justin's right. If you zoom out far enough, everything is ephemeral. The Earth is just not any old planet. Its inhabitants number 111 kings. Not forgetting, of course. Oh, awkward. I'm going to skip that line. 7,000 geographers, 900,000 businessmen, 7.5 million drunks, 311 million conceited men. In other words, approximately 2 billion grown-ups. Burn! Planet Earth just got what's the word? Just got served. Just got served. Okay.
Burned?
Just got burned. Just got
Planet
burned.
Earth just got burned.
Yeah. To give you an idea, it just got a lot warmer. Like, I think to give you an idea of the size of Earth, I can tell you that before the invention of electricity, it was necessary to maintain over the whole of 6 continents a veritable army of 462,511 lamplights, compared to the planet that just had 1. Roasted. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you, Justin. Planet Earth just got roasted. Seen from not so high above, the effect was very splendid. The movements of this army were regulated like the ballet in an opera. First came the turn of the lamplighter of New Zealand and Australia. Represent. Having lit their lanterns, they would then go off to sleep. Next in the dance, the lamplighters of China and Siberia entered on cue. They then too were conjured off into the wings. Then came the turns of the lamplighters of Russia and the Indies, then those of Africa and Europe, then those of South America, then those of North America. Never did they mistake their order of appearance on stage. It was an imposing spectacle. Only the man in charge of the single street lamp on the North Pole and his colleague in charge of the single street lamp on the South Pole used to lead lives of careless indolence. These two went to work only twice a year. That was the whole chapter. Next chapter, chapter XVII, 10, 5, and 2. Chapter 17. When you are trying to be witty, you are apt sometimes to wander from the truth. Touché. Yahweh said, by its very nature, every embodied spirit is doomed to suffer and enjoy solitude. Chapter 17. When you are trying to be witty, you are apt sometimes to wander from the truth. I have not been altogether honest in describing the lamplighters. I realize that I am in danger of giving a false impression of our planet to those who are not acquainted with it. We said the P word, which is planet. Mankind takes up very little space on Earth. Interesting. If the 2 billion inhabitants who populate the Earth were to stand up and squeeze fairly close together, as if for a public meeting, they would easily be accommodated on a public square 20 miles long and 20 miles wide. You could cram humanity onto the least island of the Pacifics. Grown-ups, of course, will not believe you when you tell them this. They think that they take up a lot of space. They fancy themselves as important as the baobabs, remember, from the beginning? You must therefore suggest that they do the calculations for themselves. They adore figures. It will make them happy. But don't waste your time on this chore. It is pointless. Believe me. After arriving on Earth, the little prince was very surprised not to see any people. He was beginning to fear he had come to the wrong planet when something coil-shaped, the color of moonlight, stirred in the sand before him. People are paying attention. Good evening, said the little prince, just in case. Good evening, said the snake. What planet have I landed on?
Let it ride.
Oh no.
Two in a row. No, it's 2 in a row.
Is it close enough?
Yeah, it's close.
Okay. On Earth, in Africa, the snake replied. Ah, so there are no people on Earth? Here, it is the desert. There are no people in the desert. The Earth is large, said the snake. The little prince sat down on the stone and lifted his eyes towards the mighty sky. I wonder, he said, do the stars glow so that someday everyone can look and find a way back to their own? Look at my planet. It is directly above us. But how far away it is. It is beautiful, said the snake. So what brings you here? Here is a picture of the snake and the star. I have been having some trouble with a flower, said the little prince. Oh, that's really sweet. Ah, said the snake, and they both fell silent. Let us have a moment of silence for the little prince and his little flower that he's having trouble with. A moment of silence. Okay. Where are the people? Resumed the little prince at last. It is a little lonely in the desert. We're feeling good. It is lonely. Ooh. Where are the people? Resumed the little prince at last. It's a little lonely in the desert. It's a little lonely when you're among people too, said the snake. The little prince studied him for a long time. You are an odd creature, he said. At last, no thicker than a finger, but more powerful than the finger of the king, said the snake. And the little prince gave a smile. You are not so very powerful. You don't even have legs. You cannot even travel. I can transport you farther than any ship, said the snake. He coiled himself around the little prince's ankle like a gold bracelet. Whomever I touch, the snake spoke again, I return them to the earth from whence they came. But you are made of purer stuff. You come from a star. The little prince said nothing. I pity you, so frail on this earth of granite. I can help you some day. Should you grow too homesick for your planet, I could. Oh, yes. Huh? Oh, yes. I understand you perfectly, said the little prince. But tell me, why do you always speak in riddles? If anyone has seen, by the way, the movie that they made of the Little Prince, they do a very cute thing where they have a snake and an actor, and they change back into one another, and they have a whole little song and dance around this thing. This is what's coming to mind. What's happening? Cheers. But tell me, why do you always speak in riddles? I solve them, one and all, said the snake, and they both fell silent. That's the end of the chapter. Interesting encounter. Hey, Sing, I missed you too. Thank you for coming back.
Tell us more about the switching.
What switching?
When you just talked about with the man and the snake.
Oh, it just that in the movie there's an actor that plays the snake.
Mhm.
So they have like a snake, and then they do the same thing with the fox, which we'll see soon. Just to have a speaking animal.
Spoiler.
Yeah. So what do we think about this chapter with the snake? Anyone has thoughts? Thoughts?
Is it a biblical shout out?
Oh, maybe there's some biblical reference, particularly to the fact that he's spoken about of not having any legs.
That's a biblical shout out.
Yeah, he's more powerful than the finger of a king, although he's no thicker than a finger. There was this one beautiful line of he said that he's lonely in the desert, and the snake said that you can be lonely with people too.
Look at that empty bottle.
Not yet. Almost. The turning to gold might be alchemical. Next chapter. By the way, we're not so far from the end. For all those that have stuck through with us, you are very sweet, and we love you. We are at page 61 of what is 90 pages. That makes us 2/3 of the way there. Jorge thinks that the snake is his ego personified. That's an interesting idea, that one bite from the ego can return one to the earth. That the ego... Why? I'm curious. Why do you think the snake is the ego? His passions, says Jorge. He has some sense. He has some camaraderie with the snake. Camaraderie. He doesn't feel like it's silly like the adults. What was the word he used to describe the adults? Not silly. He called them extraordinary, and something else. But okay, let's continue. You know what? It would be interesting to do like a full analysis of this book from like an esoteric perspective, or like from choosing a specific mystical tradition. I asked about the rose before, because the rose plays an important role in many mystical traditions. There's the rose in... Someone mentioned Rosicrucianism. There's a rose. The rose I was thinking about was there's a rose in the introduction to the Zohar in the Hakdama. There's a rose with the petals, and each petal represents something. There's a rose with 13 petals, and five thorns. That's right.
No, before we were talking about the flowers and the thorns, that was also a major thing.
Yeah. So, but no one picked up on the Zohar reference. But they definitely... It would be curious to do a full... Wikipedia, according to Jorge, says that the rose was his wife. It does seem like there was a deep romance between him and the rose. Okay, here's a trivia question to the audience. The next chapter is XVIII. What is that in normal numbers? 18 is the answer. Thank you. That's a nice idea. That he is actually he's made of stars. He's made of star stuff. He comes from he's an alien, really. Both in the sense that he's alien to the adults, and he's alien because he's from another planet. So the snake can't kill him. He's not mortal in the sense that they are. Chapter 18. Chai. The little prince crossed the desert and met with only a solitary flower. Ooh. Here's a theme. It was a flower with 3 petals, a flower of no importance. Good day, said the prince. Good day, said the flower. Where are the people? The little prince asked politely. The flower had once seen a desert caravan pass by. The people, there are some, I believe, maybe 6 or 7. I caught sight of them several years back, but one never knows where to find them. The wind drives them hither and thither. You see, they have no roots, which makes life very difficult for them. Goodbye, said the little prince. Goodbye, said the flower. Chapter 19. The little prince climbed a high mountain. The only mountain he had ever known were the 3 volcanoes, which came up to his knees, and the extinct volcano used to serve him a footstool. From a mountain as high as this, he therefore said to himself, I shall be able to see the whole planet at a glance, and all the people. But he could see nothing except the peaks of some rocks as sharp as needles. Good day, he said, just in case. Good day, good day, good day, answered the echo. Who are you? Said the little prince. Who are you? Who are you? Who are you? Replied the echoes. Be my friends. I am all alone, he said. I'm all alone, I'm all alone, I'm all alone, replied the echo. What a peculiar planet, he thought to himself. It is all dried up, full of sharp points and very salty, and the people have no imagination. They repeat whatever you say to them. On my planet, I had a flower, and she was always the first to speak. Here's the picture. That is the whole chapter. Let's see what's happening in the chat. Mediocrity says the prince is the meditative experience. Bam. Yeah, wings. But so it happened that after walking for a long time through sands and rocks and snow, the little prince finally came upon a road, and all roads lead to people. Good day, he said. He was standing in front of a garden blooming with roses. Good day, said the rose. The little prince stared at them. They all looked just like his flower. Who are you? He demanded in astonishment. We are roses, said the roses. Oh, said the little prince, and he felt extremely unhappy. His flower had told him that she was alone of her kind in the universe. And here were 5,000 of them, all identical in a single garden. She'll be mortified, he said to himself, were she to see this. She would cough tremendously and pretend to be dying just to avoid the ridicule, and I would have to pretend to be nursing her. Otherwise, she would really let herself die to humiliate me in the bargain. Whoa!
Whoa. You get a replay?
Yeah. We're gonna read that again. Whew. All right. Good day, said the roses. The little prince stared at them. They all looked just like his flower. Who are you? He demanded in astonishment. We are roses, said the roses. Oh, said the little prince. Oh, here's a picture I didn't show you. I'm enjoying this. I'm enjoying the picture the whole time without showing you guys. I'm so selfish. Nice. You can take a screenshot if you want to look at it. He felt extremely unhappy. His flower had told him that she was alone of her kind in the universe. And here were 5,000 of them, all identical in a single garden. She'd be mortified, he said to himself, were she to see this. She would cough tremendously and pretend to be dying just to avoid the ridicule. And I would have to pretend to be nursing her. Otherwise, she would really let herself die to humiliate me in the bargain. Then he went on with these thoughts. I used to think myself rich, with a flower that was unique, but all I had was a common rose. That and 3 volcanoes. which only came up to my knees, and one of those is perhaps extinct forever. All of which does not make me a very great prince. And lying down in the grass, he began to cry. So, the little prince has his one rose, but here are so many roses. His rose isn't even special at all. And she would pretend to be dying just to avoid the ridicule, and he would pretend to nurse her. Otherwise, she would really die, so that she would humiliate him in the bargain. It feels to me that in every great story, there's a moment of despair, the moment where we hit rock bottom, where that which is most precious to us in the entire universe. I want to read you that passage that we read earlier about his rose and what it meant to him. Where is it? Because now his rose, which was so precious to him, is just one amongst many. Where is it? Oh, here it is. I want to go back to that passage. For millions of years, flowers have been growing thorns. For millions of years, sheep have... Oh, here it is. Page 26. For millions of years, flowers have been growing thorns. For millions of years, sheep have been eating flowers nonetheless. And is it not a serious matter to try and understand why flowers go to such trouble producing thorns that will never be of any use to them? Is it not important? The war between sheep and flowers? Is it not more serious and more important than the calculations of a red, fat-faced gentleman? And if I personally know a flower which is unique in the world, if I personally know a flower which is unique in the world, which exists nowhere except on my planet,
That's a planet.
but which
Close with the world.
Well, that was technically a reread, but we did say the word planet. We will drink to it. I think it's our final shot. And this is our final shot. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good point.
Okay. And if I personally know a flower which is unique in the world, which exists nowhere except on my planet, but which one little sheep can destroy in a single bite, just like that one morning, without even noticing what he's doing, well, I suppose that too is of unimportance. He flustered and then continued, if someone loves a flower... Oh, this is the paragraph I wanted. If someone... I didn't have to read that paragraph with the word planet in it after all. If someone loves a flower, of which there is only one example among all the millions and millions of stars, that is enough to make him happy when he looks up at the stars and says to himself, somewhere out there is my flower. But if a sheep eats the flower, it's as though all the stars have suddenly gone out. But I suppose that too is of no importance. So he had this flower, which was the only one out there among millions of stars. And now he discovers that there are 5,000 such roses in a single garden. Yes.
I think that's like a general malady of the ego, that we want our partners to be special and unique.
Come here. Svi has some commentary.
Hello, universe.
Sit down.
Oh, just for a second. I think it's a malady of the ego for us to like want our partners or like the rose to be this special, unique thing. And then we put the rose on an unnecessary pedestal only to find out that everyone's human. A rose. Everyone's in the same garden. Sorry.
Whoever agrees with Svi, say yes.
Yeah.
Whoever disagrees, you could hold that opinion to yourself. Alicia says, feeling good, I see. This is great. Sorry, I'm late. It's fine. We're doing a very childish thing here. You can be late. Okay. So the last place we were, sorry for the reread, was that the prince lay down in the grass to cry. And now we're on chapter 21. Simi agrees with you. He gives a thumbs up. It was then that the fox, here at the lowest point. Yahweh says that part of you have your uniqueness shattered. Sarah Stay Paid says, I agree with the butterfly best. I agree with the butterfly beer best buddy. That's your new nickname, see. It's in chapter 21 that the fox appears at the deepest point of his despair, when he realizes that his rose amongst the millions of stars is no longer unique, no longer singular and beautiful as he thought it was, that the fox appears. It was then that the fox appeared. Good day, said the fox. Good day, replied the little prince politely, looking up, but unable to see anything. Over here, said the voice, under the apple tree. A good biblical reference right there. Although the Bible never mentions that it's an apple. Who are you? Said the little prince. You are very pretty. I am a fox, said the fox. Come and play with me, suggested the little prince. I am terribly sad. I can't play with you, said the fox. I am not tame. Oh, I beg your pardon, said the little prince. Then, after a moment's thought, he added, what does tame mean? Here's a little picture of the little prince laying down in the grass as he begins to cry. It's funny because I thought he'd be laying on his back, but here he's laying on his stomach. Yahweh said that the fox is woke. Woke AF. What does tame mean? You are not from these parts, said the fox. What are you looking for? I am looking for people. What does tame mean? Remember, when the prince asks a question, he never lets go of his question. People, said the fox. They have guns and they hunt. It's a great nuisance. But they also raise chickens. That is the only interesting thing about them. Are you looking for chickens? I love this. I love how people see the world through their perspective. Humans are a nuisance because they have guns, but they raise chickens. I like chicken.
Can't live with them, can't live without them.
Exactly. They also raise chickens. Are you looking for chickens? No, said the little prince. I'm looking for friends. What does tame mean? He doesn't let go of a question. Something that is frequently neglected, said the fox. It means to create ties. To create ties? Precisely, said the fox. To me, you're only still a little boy, just 100,000 other small little boys, and I have no need of you. And you, in turn, have no need of me. To you, I'm just a fox, like 100,000 other foxes. But if you tame me, then we shall need each other. To me, you shall be. Get this line. Get this theme coming back here. But if you tame me, then we shall need each other. Remember when we spoke about ownership, about the need for each other? We need each other. That's why we own each other. To me, you shall be unique in the world. To you, I shall you be unique in the world. If we need each other, we are unique to each other. Because there's only one rose which you need. And that's why it's unique. Ownership, uniqueness,
Need.
necessity. Thank you. I am beginning to understand, said the little prince. I know a flower. I think she... Oh, damn. I'm beginning to understand, said the little prince. I know a flower. I think she must have tamed me. To tame? What is tamed? When the prince asks a question, he knows what the word means. He wants to get to the bottom of it. He knows what ephemeral, this guy knows what ephemeral means. But he wants to know, what does ephemeral mean?
Is he asking what does ephemeral mean to the asker?
What does he mean to you? What does it really mean? What does it mean now? What does it mean for you? He knows what tame means. But what does tame mean? It means we need each other. I need you and you need me. And in that we are unique to each other. There are millions of channels on YouTube, but I need you
To subscribe.
because you are my students, and you need me because I'm your teacher, and that we are unique to each other, and that makes us unique. I just said that word already. That makes us tame. No. But I like this. I like this inquisition of the word. What does ephemeral mean? What does tame mean? What does unique mean? What does beautiful mean? What does important mean? Oh, we have some WhatsApp in the chat here. Sarah says this book is sneaky. It is sneaky. The rose references his wife and his desires. That's the difference between his rose and the others. They need each other. You know what? We're gonna have a big fat discussion of what this book means when we're done the book, and we're not too far from it. But the themes are beginning. I read this book a while ago, a couple years ago, but the themes are coming back to me slowly. And I have Tzvi, I have Alyssa here, and they're gonna help me flesh those themes out. Okay. To me, you shall be unique in the world. To you, I shall be unique in the world. I just want to, before I continue, I just want to mention there's a rabbinic medrash about God and Abraham. That God is known as the Yechido Shel Olam, the singular one, the only thing in existence. And Abraham is known as the Yachid because Abraham is the one who goes against the tide. He disagrees with everyone. And God wants to be in love with that which is unique in his world, with God who's unique in his world. Unique with unique. I shall be unique to you, and you shall be unique to me. I'm beginning to understand, said the little prince. I know a flower. I think she must have tamed me. Quite possible, said the fox. On this earth, one sees all matter of things. Oh, but that was not on earth, said the little prince. The fox looked rather intrigued. On another planet, then? Yes, I see. Are there huntsmen on this other planet? No. How interesting. And chickens? No. Nothing is perfect, sighed the fox. Touché. But he resumed his train of thought. Let me show you the picture of the fox and the little prince before we continue. The artwork made by the author himself in the original. That's true. My life is very monotonous. Sarah Stay Paid says, everything he thought was worthy about his unique possession of the flower is no longer different. Now she is no longer one in a million. He needs something on someone on this planet just as unique as him. Yeah, I think that's something that he's struggling with for sure. We'll see how that pans out. Uh-oh. My parents just WhatsApp me that they're joining the live stream. Whoops. Hey. All right, let's continue. If you're here, Ma and Ta, you can say hi in the comments and chat. Thanks for joining. I love you. My life is very monotonous. I run after the chickens, and the men run after me. All the chickens are the same. All the men are the same. Consequently, I get a little bored. But if you tame me, my days will be filled with sunlight. I shall know the sound of a doorstep, of a footstep different from all other steps, from all the rest. Other steps make me run to earth. Yours will call me out of my foxhole like music. And besides, look over there. You see the fields of corn? Well, I don't eat bread. Corn is of no use to me. Cornfields remind me of nothing, which is sad. On the other hand, I think there's a typo in this book here. You see here? It says, "You hair is the color of gold." Do you see this? It should say your. It's missing the letter R.
Dear sir.
Here's the dilemma. Do I read the book as it's typed, or do I correct it and put in the letter R, which I know should be missing?
The important thing is the discussion.
Esoterica just said, Zevi, congrats on the 10K. Wishing you a meaningful fast and hope to catch up soon. Can't stick around long. Writing this week episode on Catharism, and need to get back to it while the kiddos nap. Yo, Justin, that's so sweet of you. I did not think that anyone would pop into this live chat to give money to the channel and to the project, and you gave 18, which is high, and that is so freaking cool of you. Thanks, Justin, for joining us. Chaim, brother. I just want to say that there have been many people who I've encountered along this journey of creating the channel and making this project and trying to share what's meaningful to me and what I hope will bring people together in a world that's so fragmented and divided. And in that journey, I've had the great pleasure of meeting people that are with me in this journey, that are sharing real scholarship in a direction that's trying to educate people and inform people of different ways of thinking about religion and life and things that are important to us. I think something which this book does too. And one of those people is Justin Sledge from Esoterica. And that's so sweet that you came to join us for this live stream and to donate. Justin's also a patron of the channel, which is so crazy. Justin, that's so sweet. I freaking love you. And I hope that everyone goes to check out your channel, Esoterica, which is making incredible content about esotericism, about the esoteric side of history, philosophy, and religion. And I'm looking forward to hanging out with you in person soon in the future. Thanks for coming, man. That's so sweet of you. Let's get back to the story. My life is very monotonous. I run after the chickens. The men run after me. All the chickens are the same. All the men are the same. Consequently, I get a little bored. But if you tame me, my days will be filled with sunlight. I shall know this. I love this line here. I shall know the sound of a footstep different from all the rest. Other steps make me run to earth. Yours will call me out of my foxhole like music. And besides, look over there. You see the fields of corn? Well, I don't eat bread. Corn is of no use to me. Cornfields remind me of nothing, which is sad. On the other hand, your hair is the color of gold. Here's the typo. Your hair is the color of gold. So how wonderful it will be when you have tamed me. The corn which is golden will remind me of you. Ah.
It's toxic.
And I shall come to love the sound of the wind in the fields of the corn. Did you see what just happened there? Oh, wow. Firstly, a lot of people in the chat here said that a lot of people found Seekers of Unity through Esoterica. So thank you, Justin, for helping people find us. Andre says that nice to see two of the most amazing YouTubers that I follow here. That's really sweet. This is a beautiful notion here, that certain things in this world are meaningless to us because we have no relationship to them. To the fox who does not eat bread, like this. The cornfields, which I guess you can make bread out of, are meaningless. One second. But the prince, who has golden locks of hair, I'll show you a picture. Those locks here, those locks will be, the fox will be reminded of the locks of the prince once they think, when they see the cornrows. So the cornrows, which exist in the world of the fox, which have no meaning, will become meaningful because they're associated with something which is unique to him, which is something that he needs. He's been tamed by, and he needs the prince. And therefore, when he sees the cornrows, he sees the hair of the prince. And when he sees the cornrows, he thinks of something which is meaningful and precious and unique to him. He's converted an aspect of his world which is meaningless to something which is meaningful, to something which is relational.
That's a theme that comes up in the unbearable lightness of being. That relationship gives poetry to mundane items in our life that wouldn't otherwise have meaning because of their context of relationship.
Svi says that that relationship in Mulan Kundera, the unbearable lightness of being, are poetic because they create an affinity to something which we have a deeper love and relationship to. Justin Burkholdt says he creates a symbol of something which he loves, something which he cares for, and now this thing has symbolic meaning for him. Beautiful. On the other hand, your hair is the color of gold, so how wonderful it will be when you have tamed me, when you have made me unique and needed to you. The corn which is golden will remind me of you, and I shall come to love the sound of the wind in the fields of the corn, because the sound of the wind in the fields of the corn will remind me of you. The fox fell silent and looked steadily at the little prince for a long time. Please, he said, tame me. I should like to, replied the little prince. But I don't have much time. I have friends to discover and many things to understand. One only ever understands what one tames. People have the time to understand anything, but they buy everything ready-made from the shops. But there is no shop where friends can be bought, so people no longer have friends. If you want a friend, tame me. What do I have to do, said the little prince. You have to be very patient with the fox. First, you'll have to sit down a short distance away from me, like that in the grass. I shall watch you out of the corner of my eye, and I will say nothing. Words are the source of misunderstanding, but each day you may sit a little closer to me. And the next day the prince came back. I gotta read that paragraph again. Justin says that it reminds me of a poem from St. Francis Assisi about the sun. Please, Justin, share that poem in the chat, and I would love to read it. And Alicia says, the soul hears the poetry in its own language, and we try to grapple with our intellectual knowledge. Yeah, sorry, give me 1 second. Okay. This theme of language. Let's read that paragraph again. The fox fell silent and looked steadily at the little prince for a long time. Please, he said, tame me. Please, he said, tame me. I should like to, replied the little prince, but I don't have much time. I have friends to discover and many things to understand. And this was what the fox says. The fox, the wise fox, one only ever understands what one tames. People no longer have the time to understand anything. They buy things ready-made from the shops, but there is no shop where friends can be bought. So people no longer have friends. If you want a friend, tame me. Make the time to stop and come into a relationship where I need you and you need me. And in that we will both be tamed in the relationship, and that cannot be bought in any store. The little prince gives in and says, what do I have to do? And the fox instructs him how to tame him. He says, sit at a distance, and I'll see you from the corner of my eye. And say nothing, because words are the source of misunderstanding. Language leads to misunderstanding. Just be in my presence so that I can be comfortable with you, and slowly you can come closer to me. I think Justin shared the poem that we asked for. Let's see. Specifically, the end of this stanza. Thank you, Justin. Be praised, my Lord, through all your creations, specifically through our brother Sol, who brings the day, and you give light through him. He is beautiful and radiant in all his splendor. Of you, most high, he bears the likeness. Nice. The next day, the little prince came back. It would have been better to come back at the same time of day, said the fox. For instance, if you come at 4 in the afternoon when 3 o'clock strikes, and I shall begin to feel happy, the closer our time approaches, the happier I shall feel. But 4 o'clock, I shall already be getting agitated and worried. I shall be discovering that happiness has its price. But if you show up at any odd time, I shall never know when to start dressing my heart for you. We all need rituals. And here is a picture of the fox. It looks more like a dog. But remember that the author was told by adults that he should not be painting boa constrictors. So that's why we got a dog-looking fox. Schmidt, you missed nothing. We're just getting started. So the dog, not the dog, the fox wants him to come at a certain time so that he can begin to dress his heart to be ready for the little prince. He says what we all need is rituals. Now, the little prince, as we know, has an impeccable vocabulary. And he knows what rituals means, but he asks the fox, what is a ritual? What is a ritual? Something else that is frequently neglected, said the fox. That's what makes one day different from the other days, 1 hour different from the other hours. There is a ritual, for example, amongst my huntsmen. On Thursdays, they dance with the village girls. So Thursdays is a wonderful day for me. I can take a stroll as far as the vineyard. If the huntsmen went dancing at any old time, the days would all be the same, and I should never have a holiday. So the little prince tamed the fox. They became needed to one another. And when the time for him to leave was approaching, "Oh," said the fox, "I'm going to cry." "It's your own fault," said the little prince. "I never wished you any harm, but you wanted me to tame you." "I know," said the fox. "And now you're going to cry," said the little prince. "I know," said the fox. "So you have gained nothing from it at all." "Yes, I have gained something from it," said the fox, "because of the color of the corn." Then he added, "Go and look at the roses again. You will understand that yours is, after all, unique in the world. Then come back and say goodbye to me. As a present, I will tell you a secret." The little prince went off to look at the rose again. "You are nothing like my rose," he told them. "As yet, you are nothing at all. Nobody has tamed you, and you have tamed nobody. You are as my fox used to be. He was just a fox, like 100,000 other foxes, but I made him my friend, and now he is unique in the world. And the roses felt very uncomfortable. You are beautiful, but you are empty, he went on. One could not die for you. Of course, an ordinary passerby would think my rose looked like you, but in herself, she matters more than all of you together, since she is what I watered, since she is what I placed under the glass dome, since it is she that I sheltered with the screen, since it is she who the caterpillars I killed, except the 2 or 3 that were saved up to become butterflies, since it is she that I listened to when she complained or boasted, or when she was simply being silent, since it is she who is my rose. And he went back to the fox. Goodbye, he said. Goodbye, said the fox. Now here is my secret. Very simple. You can only see things clearly with your heart. What is essential is invisible to the eye. What is essential is invisible to the eye, repeated the little prince, so as to remember. It is the time you have wasted on your rose that makes your rose so important. It is the time you have wasted on your rose that makes your rose so important. It is the time I have wasted on my rose, repeated the little prince, so as to remember. People have forgotten this truth, said the fox, but you must never forget. You must become responsible forever for what you have tamed. You are responsible for your rose. I am responsible for my rose, the little prince repeated, so as to remember. Fox mic drops. Wow. That brings us to chapter 22. Zevi is going to take a bathroom break, and we will be back in a moment to continue. In the meanwhile, we will have a short intermission where you can stare at the wall. Not for too long. This has been great. So good. It was worth the beers. It was worth the beers this one for sure. Good idea. Yeah. Yeah. We are back. And no one even left. What? You guys are awesome. Thank you for waiting. Schmidt says, this got me tripping on what it means to be tamed versus wild, because I feel like I came into the story in the middle. Yeah. Sarah, stay paid. I like that. Thank you. Minister. Nice. Yeah, Ali, I like that. I like that. The fox is a teacher, but he's also he's also vulnerable. He wants to be tamed, and he articulates his needs. Yeah, I like that. Okay. Chapter 22. We're at page 73 out of 90. We're almost there. Good day, said the little prince. Good day, said the railway pointsman. What do you here? Asked the little prince. I sort the passengers into bundles of 1,000, said the pointsman. I dispatch the trains that carry them, now to the right, now to the left. At which moment an express train, brightly lit and rumbling like thunder, shook the postman's cabin as it passed. They're in a great hurry, said the little prince. What are they looking for? Not even the engine driver can answer that, said the pointsman. At which point there rumbled past in the opposite direction a second bright lit express train. Are they coming back already? Asked the little prince. Those are not the same ones, said the pointsman. It's an exchange. Were they not happy where they were? Were they not happy where they were? One is never happy where one is, said the pointsman. At which the thunder of a thirdly brightly lit express train rumbled past. Are they chasing the first passengers? Asked the little prince. They are chasing nothing at all, said the pointsman. They are asleep inside or else yawning. Only the children are flattened their noses against the window panels. Only the children know what they are looking for, said the little prince. They waste their time over a rag doll, and it becomes very important to them. And if it is taken away from them, they cry. They're the lucky ones, said the pointsman. I love this notion of wasting time over something is what makes it precious to you. Wasting time over something is what makes it precious to you. Wasting time over something is what makes it precious to you. And Yawings agrees, and Ali says that tame me means cleanse me, make me unique. Yawings, I remember your last name is Brotherson, but what's your first name? Tell me your first name. Tom? Thomas? Tom. Okay, chapter 23. Good day, said the little prince. Good day, said the merchant. The merchant was selling... Tom, thank you. The merchant was selling patient pills to quench thirst. You sell one each week, and you no longer feel the need to drink. Why are you selling these? Said the little prince. Asked the little prince. They're a great time saver, said the merchant. The experts have worked it out. You can save 53 minutes in each week. And what do I do with these 53 minutes? You do whatever you want. For my part, said the little prince to himself, if I had 53 minutes to spare, I would take my time walking slowly towards the nearest fountain of water. Da-da-da-da-da-da. We're saving time to do the things that we would do anyways. With that time, we save the time from drinking to walk near the fountain to drink. It is again the story of the adult who does not know their own values, that they chase the things which are no longer important or necessary. Well, hold on. No, I'm good, thanks. Schmidt. Time is anything we truly have. Chapter 24. It was now the 8th day since my breakdown in the desert, and I listened... Oh, we're switching narrators here. It was now the 8th day since my breakdown in the desert, and I listened to the story of the merchant while drinking the last drop of my water supply. Well, I said to the little prince, they are all very charming, these reminiscences of yours, but I have yet to mend my airplane, and I have nothing left to drink, and I too should be happy if I could take my time walking slowly towards the nearest fountain of water. He wants some water. He's thirsty. My friend the fox, the little prince began to say, but, my dear fellow, now it's too late for foxes. Why is that? because we are about to die of thirst. He could not follow this reasoning and replied, "It is good to have a friend, even if you are about to die. For I am very happy to have a fox for a friend." One does not understand the danger, I said to myself. He who has never been thirsty or hungry, a little sunshine is all that he needs. But he looked at me and read my thoughts. I am thirsty too. Let's look for a well. Wow, that was really intense. This notion that we can pursue the beautiful things in life, like friendship, foxes, and things like that, when everything else is fine and dandy, but when we're thirsty, when we're dying, when we have a material and an economic needs to find, we can't have this leisure of finding friends and foxes. But the little prince says, "No, I'm thirsty too. And I still value my friendships. And let us look for a well." I shrugged warily. It is absurd to go looking for a well at random in the immensity of the desert. Nevertheless, we set off. After we had walked in silence for several hours, darkness fell and the stars began to light up. I noticed them as if in a dream, since I felt slightly feverish with thirst. The little prince's words were dancing in my head. Yahweh says Psalms 24, 1 through 5. Please do post the Psalms in full if they're relevant and beautiful. I'm sure they are. The little prince's words were dancing in my head. "So, do you get thirsty?" I asked him. Ki ayel ta'arog al afike mayim kenenafshi tzama lecha Elohim, says the psalmist. Like a deer thirsts for water, so does my soul for you. So does my soul thirst for you, O God. Ki ayel ta'arog. "So, do you get thirsty?" I asked him. But he did not reply. He merely said, "Water may also be good for the heart." But I did not understand him. I did not understand it, but said nothing. I knew better by now than to question him. He was tired. He sat down. I sat down next to him. Then, after a silence, he spoke again. "The stars are beautiful because of a flower that cannot be seen." I replied, "Yes, that is so," and watched, without saying anything, the folds of sand beneath the moonlight. "The desert is beautiful," he added, which was true. I had always loved the desert. You sit down on the sand dune. You see nothing. You hear nothing. Yet all the time something is radiating through the silence. What makes the desert beautiful, said the little prince, is that somewhere it is hiding a well. To my surprise, I suddenly understood for the first time this mysterious radiation of the sands. When I was a little boy, I lived in a very old house where, according to hearsay, a treasure was buried. Of course, nobody ever discovered it, nor perhaps did they even look for it. But it cast a spell over that entire house. My home was hiding a secret in the depths of its heart. "Yes," I said to the little prince, "whether it is a house or stars or the desert, what makes their beauty is invisible." "I am pleased," he said, "that you agree with my fox." Since the little prince was now falling asleep, I lifted him in my arms and set off walking again. I felt deeply moved. I felt that I was carrying a fragile treasure. I felt that nothing was more fragile to be found on this earth. In the moonlight, I looked at his pale forehead, his closed eyes, his locks of hair stirring in the wind, and said to myself, "What I see here is but a shell. What is important is the invisible." His lips were parted in what seemed like a faint smile, and I said to myself, what affects me so strongly about the sleeping prince is his loyalty to a flower, to the image of a rose which shines inside him like the flame of a lamp, even as he sleeps. and I felt him to be more fragile still. A lamp needs to be shielded with care. The merest puff of wind can blow it out. And walking along in this fashion, I came upon the well at daybreak. We just clocked 3 hours into our live reading of The Little Prince. And there are 20 people that are sitting here reading and watching with us, that are joining us in this absurd journey into the beautiful novel of a children's book, The Little Prince. I just want to say that I so love you, 20 people out of the 10,000 seekers of unity that have joined us to sit through a beautiful reading of a children's book. The Little Prince feels very lonely in the universe, and I feel lonely too sometimes. But when I sit down, I'm able to engage and connect with fellow seekers, to think about things that are important and beautiful to us, like the single rose is beautiful and important to the Little Prince. It makes things all the less lonely. And I'd like to thank each and every one of you for sitting here with us and for joining us in this reading. And I hope that in this camaraderie, in this friendship, in this community of seekers, you feel less lonely too. And I have no words to thank you for joining us. Chapter 25. Thank you. P.S. People leap into express trains, said the Little Prince, but they no longer know what they're looking for, so they get agitated and go around in circles. Thank you, Alicia. Thank you, Myocardies. Thank you, blah blah. Thank you, Joshua. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Schmidt. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Tyler. People leap into express trains, said the Little Prince, but they no longer know what they're looking for, so they get agitated and go around in circles. And he added, it's not worth the trouble. The well we had found was not like any other wells in the Sahara. Sahara wells were simple holes bored into the sand. Thank you, Jorge. This was like a well in a village, but there was no village here, and I thought I must be dreaming. This is strange, I said to the Little Prince. Everything is ready and waiting. The pulley, the bucket, the rope. He laughed and touched the rope and set the pulley in motion, and the pulley creaked as an old weather vane creaks when the wind has been asleep for a long time. Here's a picture. Thank you, guys. He laughed and touched the rope and set the pulley in motion, and the pulley creaked, and an old weather vane creaks when the wind has been asleep for a long time. Do you hear? Said the Little Prince. We have awoken up the well, and it is singing. I do not want him to strain himself, however. Let me do it, I said. It is too heavy for you. I hoisted the bucket slowly to the edge and carefully set it down. The song of the pulley was ringing in my ear, and in the still trembling water I could see the trembling sun. And in the still trembling water I could see the trembling sun. How I long for this water, said the little prince. Give me some water. And I understood what he had been looking for. I raised the bucket to his lips. He drank, his eyes closed. This water gladdened his heart. It was something other than a mere beverage. It was sweetness. Its sweetness was born of our march beneath the stars, of the pulley song and the exertion of my arms. It was good for the heart, like a present. When I was a little boy, the lights of the Christmas tree, the music at midnight mass, the tenderness of the smiling faces, all these together made up the radiance of the presents I received. Where are you from? Said the little prince. People grow 5,000 roses in one garden, and they still do not find what they are looking for. No, they do not find it, I replied. Yet, what they are looking for could be found in a single rose or in a handful of water. That is true, I replied. And he added, but the eyes are blind. One must look with the heart. I had now drunk my fill of water. I breathed deeply. The desert sand at daybreak is the color of honey. I was happy too on account of this color of honey. Why then did I feel such sadness? You must keep to our promise, said the little prince gently after sitting down beside me. What promise? You know, a muzzle for the sheep. I have to be responsible for my flower. I took the rough sketches from my pocket. The little prince glanced over them and said, laughing, Your baobabs, they look more like cabbages. Oh, and I had been so proud of my baobabs. Your fox's ears, they look more like thorns. They're so long. He laughed again. That's not my fault, my little fellow. I've only ever been able to draw the outside of boas and the inside of boas. Oh, you'll manage, he said. Children will understand. So I sketched him a muzzle, but my heart felt tight as I handed it to him. You have plans that I do not know about. He made no reply. Then he said, You know, the day I fell to earth, tomorrow will be the anniversary. After a moment's silence, he went on. I landed very near to where we are now. He blushed. Again, without knowing why, I felt a strange sorrow. One question, however, occurred to me. It was not by accident then on the morning when I met you a week ago that you were walking along like that, all alone, 1,000 miles from human habitation, that you were on your way back to the place where you landed. The little prince blushed once again, and I added hesitantly, because of its being the anniversary, perhaps. The little prince blushed no more. He never answered the question, but when somebody blushes, that means yes, doesn't it? Ah, I said to him, now I am frightened. But he interrupted me. Now you must work. You must set off back to your engine. I shall wait for you here. Come back tomorrow evening. But I was not reassured. I remembered the fox. You run the risk of a few tears when you allow yourself to be tamed. Now, chapter 26. Now to the well with the next to the well with the mountains, next to the well with the remains of an old stone wall. When I returned from my labors the next evening, I could see from a distance my little prince sitting on top of it, his legs dangling. Then I heard his voice saying, "So you cannot remember? But this is not the exact spot." Another voice must have replied, for he answered back, "Yes, of course. It is the right day, but this is not the right place." I kept walking towards the well. Still I could not see or hear anyone. However, the little prince answered again, "But of course, you will see where my tracks begin in the sand. You only have to wait for me there. I'll be there tonight." I was now 60 yards from the well, but still I could see nothing. After a silence, the little prince spoke again. "And your poison is good? Are you sure not to make me suffer for long?" I came to a halt. There was a lump in my throat, but still I did not understand. "Now go away," he said. "I want to get down." At which I lowered my eyes to the base of the wall and leaped into the air. There, rearing up before the little prince, was one of those yellow snakes that can dispatch you from this life in 30 seconds. Rummaging through my pockets for my revolver, I started running, but the noise I made, the snake slid smoothly across the sand like the last spur of a dying fountain, and slipped unhurriedly between the stones with a light metallic sound. I reached the wall just in time to catch the little prince in my arms. His face was white as snow. "What nonsense is this? So now you talk of snakes?" I had loosened the yellow scarf he always wore around his neck. I moistened his temples and made him drink some water, and now I did not dare question him further. He looked at me sullenly and put his arms around my neck. I could feel his heart beating, like a dying bird brought down by a rifle shot. He said, "I am happy you found what you needed for your machine. Now you'll be able to return home. How did you do that? How did you know that?" I had just been coming to tell him the news that against all odds my efforts had been successful. He made no answer to my question, but he added, "I too am returning home today." Then, in a sad voice, "It is a lot further away, a lot more difficult." I sensed clearly that something extraordinary was happening. I was holding him in my arms like a child, and yet he seemed to be sliding into an abyss, and I could do nothing to keep him back. His gaze was solemn, lost in the far distance. "I have your sheep. I have your bucks for the sheep, and I have the muzzle." He gave me a melancholy smile. A melancholy smile. I waited for a long time. I felt him reviving little by little. "Little fellow, you have been afraid. Of course you have he had been afraid." But he laughed softly. "I shall be far more afraid this evening." Once again, I felt myself chilled by a sense of irreparability, and I sensed I could not endure the thought of never hearing that laughter again. It was for me like a fountain in the desert. "Little fellow, I want to hear your laughter again." But he said, "Tonight it will be a year. My star will be directly above the spot where I fell to the earth a year ago. Little fellow, surely the story about a snake and a meeting place and a star is all a bad dream." But he did not answer. He said, "What is important cannot be seen." Yes, I know. It is the same as with the flower. If you look If you love a flower that lives on a star, it is sweet to look upon the night sky. All the stars are in blossom. Yes, I know. It's the same as with the water. What you gave me to drink was a kind of music because of the pulley and the rope. Do you remember how good it was? Yes, I know. At night you will look up at the stars. Mine is too small to point out to you. It is better that way. For you, my star would just be one of many stars. That way you will love watching them all. They will all be your friends. What is more, I'm going to give you a present. He laughed once more. Ah, little prince, how I love to hear your laugh. And that is my present, just that. As it was when we drank the water. What are you trying to say? The stars men follow have different meanings. For some people, travelers, the stars are guides. For others, they are merely little lights in the sky. For others still, the scientists, they are problems to be solved. For my businessmen, they meant gold. But for all these people, the stars are silent. For you, the stars will be as they are for no one else. What are you trying to say? At night, when you look at the sky, since I shall be living on a star, and since I shall be laughing on a star, for you it will be as if all the stars are laughing. You alone will have stars that can laugh. And he laughed again. And when you have got over your loss, for we always do, you will be happy to have known me. You will always be my friend. You will laugh with me, and sometimes you will open your window just like that for the sake of opening it. And your friends will be amazed to see you laughing as you look up at the sky. Then you will say to them, yes, it is the stars. They always make me laugh. And they will think you are crazy. I will have played a mean trick on you. And he laughed again. As if instead of stars, I'd given you a string of little laughing bells. And he laughed again. And then he became serious once more. Tonight, you know, do not come. I would not leave you. I shall seem to be very sick. I shall even seem to be dying. That is how it must be. Don't come to watch that. That is not worth the trouble. I won't leave you. But he was anxious. If I tell you this, it is also because of the snake. He must not bite you. Snakes are spiteful. They can bite you just for the fun of it. I won't leave you. But something seemed to reassure them. I suppose it's true that they have no poison left for a second bite. That night I did not notice him setting off. He slipped away without a sound. When I managed to catch up with him, he was walking resoundingly away with a rapid step. He merely said, "Ah, you are there." And he took my hand. And he took my hand. And soon began fretting again. You were wrong to come. It will upset you. I shall seem to be dead, and it will not be true. I said nothing. You understand? It is too far. I cannot take this body along with me. It is too heavy. I said nothing. Left behind, it will only be an old cast-off shell. There is nothing sad about an old shell. I said nothing. He began to lose heart, but he made one further effort. It will be rather nice, you know. I shall too look up at the stars. All the stars will be wells with rusty pulleys, all the stars will pour water forth for me to drink. I said nothing. It will be amusing, don't you see, to have 500 million little bells, and I shall have 500 million fountains of water. And now he fell silent too, for he was crying. Here is the spot. Let me take the next step alone. And he sat down because he was afraid. Then he added, You know my flower. I'm responsible for her. And she is so weak. She is so naive. She has 4 little thorns to protect her against the world. Now I sat down too because I could no longer stand, he said. Well, that is all. Still he hesitated a little. Then he got to his feet. He took one step forward. I was motionless. There was nothing except a flash of yellow near his ankle. He stood still for an instant. He did not cry out. He fell as urgently. He fell as gently as a tree falls. There was not even any sound because of the sand. We're about to read the next part of the story, the final part, where after the prince has disappeared. Give me 1 second, I'll be back with you. Chapter 27. And now, of course, 6 years have already passed. I have never told this story before. The friends who saw me again on my return were very happy to see me alive. I seemed sad, but I said to them, It's exhausting. Now, I've gotten over my loss a little, which is to say, not entirely, but at least I know that he returned safely to his planet. For at daybreak, I could not find his body. It was not such a heavy body, and at night I loved listening to the stars. They are like 5,000 million little bells. Here is an extraordinary thing. When I drew the muzzle for the little prince, I forgot to add the leather strap. He will never have been able to attach the muzzle to the sheep. Then I wondered aloud to myself what happened on his little planet. Perhaps the sheep has eaten the flower after all. Sometimes I say to myself, Of course not. The little prince shuts his flower every night under her glass dome. And he keeps a close watch on his sheep, and then I am happy, and all the stars laugh softly. At other times I say to myself, everyone's attention wanders sooner or later, and once is enough. One evening he forgot the glass dome, or else the sheep has got out in the night without any noise, and the little bells all turn to tears. Here there is a great mystery. For you who love the little prince, as for me, Nothing in the universe can be the same if somewhere, we do not know where, a sheep we have never met has or has not eaten a rose. Look up at the sky. Ask yourself, has the sheep eaten the flower or not? And you will see how everything changes. And no grown-up will ever understand the significance of this. This to me is the loveliest and saddest landscape in the world. It is the same landscape as on the preceding page, but I have drawn it one more time to show it to you properly. It was here that the little prince appeared on earth and then disappeared. Look closely at this landscape so as to be sure to recognize it, should you travel one day to the African desert. And if you happen to pass this spot, I beg you not to hurry, but wait for a moment directly beneath the star. And if a child comes up to you and laughs and has golden hair and does not answer your questions, you shall easily guess who it is, in which case, be a good boy or girl. Do not leave me in such a sorry state. Write quickly and tell me that he has returned. And that, my friends, is the end of Little Prince. Thank you all for joining us for this wonderful reading of this wonderful little book. I think that it's a book that needs to be read a few times to allow its messages to penetrate. It's definitely different every time you read it. But thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here. And thank you for being part of this beautiful, beautiful community. Cheers. Cheers. Thank you, Joshua. Thank you, Enemy of Eldar. Thank you, D.S. Atkinson. Thank you, Mediocrities. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Tom Yawings. Thank you, Ram Kitty. Thank you, Andre. Thank you, Jorge. Thank you, Blah Blah. Thank you very much, Tyler. That's very generous of you. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Joshua. Thank you all for joining us. Looking forward to continuing to seek unity together and build this beautiful community. And we have a lot of exciting stuff coming out. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from all of you. And l'chaim. Good night.